Ladies and gentlemen, right now, it's very surprising, actually. Hurricane Milton has been upgraded to a Category 5 with 175-mile-an-hour winds. They are giving evacuation orders throughout Florida. There's photos and videos circulating of people GTFOing from Florida because they're expecting on the West Coast 8 to 12-foot storm surges. This is no joke. I am not the expert on what you should or should not be doing. I will only ask you to please consider what they are telling you right now. This is apparently the biggest storm in 100 years, and it's going to just slam as a major hurricane Category 5 right into Florida. And so for my friends and friends of the show who are out there, you might have to come visit and come on the show. And stay safe. But in the meantime, while we are facing this imminent disaster, we've got big news pertaining to the existing disaster in North Carolina and Georgia. And that is over the weekend, which I got to be honest, as much as people don't like Kamala Harris, it really is surprising to see that she tweeted out that the people of Lebanon are suffering. And so that we're going to give them an additional $157 million, bringing the total to $385 million. And everybody collectively lost their minds. How could you be so callous? I mean, right now, of all that, just don't say anything. It had to be Kamala Harris desperately trying to avoid becoming president by tweeting out that she was going to give away hundreds of millions of dollars when, guess what? The day before, FEMA announced $45 million would be going to the victims of Hurricane Helene, which is remarkable. A little bit more than 10% of what Lebanon's gotten this year. Can't say that I'm surprised. We'll talk about that. Plus, she appeared on Call Her Daddy, which actually the Call Her Daddy podcast is getting a backlash over this. Alex Cooper, the host, apparently has a lot of people watch her show who are mixed politics, and now she's pissed a lot of people off. Elon Musk has this great interview with Tucker Carlson where he says that, hey, look, the reason why a lot of billionaires are lining up behind Kamala Harris, it's because Trump's going to release the Epstein files. And then he makes a joke about how much prison time do you think I'm going to get if Kamala wins? So we'll talk about that, plus a lot of other news. Marjorie Taylor Greene in the news because she says that, yes, they can control the weather and keeps it at that. And the media then put the word they in quotes. I can believe they did that. But before we get started, my friends, I got good news. Head over to boonieshq.com because guess what? Our skateboards are in stock. I'll give you some numbers. The Boobies, which is a skateboard with a blue-footed booby on it, and those birds are hilarious if you don't know what they are, is selling like hotcakes. Now, it can't beat Step on Sneck and Find Out. We've sold several hundred of these. And I will say this, Mr. Bocus Pro Model Skateboard has outsold me. I am proud. I'm proud. Rest in peace, Mr. Bocus. So boonieshq.com. But also head over to timcast.com and click Join Us to become a member and support our work directly. As a member, you'll get access to our live, members-only, uncensored show Monday through Thursday at 10 p.m. where you as members can call in and ask us questions or just tell us how wrong we are. And we encourage you to do so because we love those discussions. But also, if you're listening to this on the audio side, please leave us a good review because we never really ask, and we should. So if you're on Apple Podcasts, give us 5 stars. Tell everybody why we're the best show and everybody knows. And share the show with your friends. Smash that like button. Subscribe to this channel. Share the show, as I mentioned. Joining us tonight to talk about this and so much more is Rob Dew.
Hey, everybody. How's it going?
Who are you? What do you do?
What do I do? Well, I've done a lot of stuff. Since 2009, I've been at Infowars. And I've seen all the trials and tribulations going through that. And I've got a pretty good story to tell you about what's going on currently because it does change day by day. The Democratic Party is closing in on Alex Jones and the agents that I think are still overall pissed off that Hillary Clinton did not win. And so they've taken this Sandy Hook thing that happened and turned it into Alex's whole identity and have used it just to attack him aggressively. And there's 2 big events coming up, one in October and one in November. In October, they will be looking at whether they could put Alex under a receiver, which is sort of like making him an indentured servant. So basically taking away his financial freedom on top of what they're already doing with the bankruptcy. And then in November, there's going to be 2 auctions where they're going to auction off the digital assets of Infowars and then the physical assets. And those are part of the liquidation that was agreed to by both parties. And so that could be a big turning point. Somebody could come in and buy Infowars and keep it going. Elon, yeah, he's.
Has he joked about it, or?
Well, I think that was an account that wasn't a real account. Yeah, a parody account that did it. But the real thing is, Alex is fighting a lot of battles on a lot of fronts, and he's been around for a long time. I used to listen to Alex Jones at a job I had, Tokyo Electron. I was a video guy there. And I'd put on Alex Jones all day and just listen to him while I was editing and just had him in the background. And, with all the news and his perspective and the way he was able to draw different events you would not think were related and somehow show you how
he predicted 9/11.
Oh, yeah. I mean,
that's not a joke, and he actually has a video from like July of 2001 where he says they're going to target the World Trade Centers and blame Osama bin Laden.
Yes,
and you can find these videos, you can watch them. And more recently, he predicted the Russian invasion of Ukraine several months in advance. I asked him.
He called it end of February.
Exactly.
When it happened.
And I asked him, how did he know? And he was like, Tim, I just read the news. I don't know. I just read an article and it said these things were going on. And I'm like, that's going to happen.
Well, I think what happens is when he's in his zone, which is, on the show, he's thinking about and he's looking at all the articles and, he's like that guy looking at all the
red
tapes.
lines.
Yeah, he's looking at everything together and he's like, okay, I could see it right now. It's going to happen end of February. They're going in. They're going to march in. And he called it. I mean, he called it.
We'll see what happens in the next month or two or the next couple of months.
We will. And, people can help out. And I appreciate you having me on to at least tell people how they can help. And that's, go to realalexjones.com where he's got his, he's running a Give, Send, Go for his legal defense. Because if he's able to fight these battles, he can stay on the field. And that's, I think, the main thing for him is staying on the field, fighting, realalexjones.com. And then, I'm sporting one of these shirts from the Alex Jones store.
Experience.
This is the Alex Jones Experience, and you can check that out at thealexjonesstore.com. And he's got lots of T-shirts, and these are separate companies. They're not associated with him because he really can't own any assets. That's where they're taking everything away from him.
Right on.
And, this is a guy,
Let's, we'll get into it, I'm sure, and more in depth with those updates, but it should be fun. Thanks for hanging out.
Oh, yeah.
We got Phil hanging out.
Hello, everybody. My name is Phil Labonte. I'm the lead singer of the heavy metal band All That Remains. I'm an anti-communist and a counter-revolutionary. Hannah Claire, how are you?
It's so fun to have you back. I missed you while you were on tour, and it's great to have you with us. I sometimes hope the Elon Musk parody account is actually just Elon Musk's burner account where he launches ideas and sees what people are going to say. But yeah, I'm Hannah Claire Brimlow. I'm on the show.
I always think it's Adrian Dittman.
Oh, maybe. Let's get started.
Here's the big story from over the weekend from Newsweek. Kamala Harris's Lebanon relief under scrutiny as GOP stokes Helene backlash. Look, I like Newsweek. They do a lot of good stuff sometimes. They're not as bad as a lot of these other corporate press outlets. They've got some good people over there. But this one is just, guys, GOP stokes Helene backlash. Kamala Harris, on October 5th, for no reason, tweeted out, "The people of Lebanon are facing an increasingly dire humanitarian situation. I am concerned about the security and well-being of civilians suffering in Lebanon and will continue working to help meet the needs of all civilians there. To that end, the United States will provide nearly $157 million in additional assistance to the people of Lebanon for essential needs, such as food, shelter, water, protection, and sanitation, to help those who have been displaced by the recent conflict. This additional support brings total U.S. assistance to Lebanon over the last year to over $385 million. Why? Why?
Who else could use food, water, and protection?
Just first question. Why tweet this?
You want to rub it in people's faces. That's what it is.
Was Kamala sitting there being like, I really don't want to be president. I'm going to sabotage my own campaign right now.
Michael Malice knows why. He said it on the Joe Rogan podcast. She's a retard.
It's one of the wildest tweets because she put this out while Donald Trump was speaking at the Butler rally, his big return to Butler, Pennsylvania rally.
This is her gotcha moment.
On stage, and to distract from whatever he's saying, she's like, I know what I'll say.
Ableist.
That will make people like me. I don't really believe she writes her own tweets. So whichever aide wrote this for her and was like, no, it's a great idea that we talk about this right now, clearly did not read the room when it comes to the American people.
There is a secret MAGA mole working for Kamala's campaign.
Writing the tweets.
And was like, I am going to put a stop to this, and just tweeted this out because, look, there's a lot of money the U.S. gives to a lot of people, and we're pissed off about most of it.
Yeah.
But you don't tweet about it. And so here she is in one of the most critical moments where people in North Carolina and Georgia are suffering and dying. And she's like, by the way, $400 million went to Lebanon.
What are the chances it was like one of the tweets where you schedule for later? Someone scheduled it and they forgot to take it off. They're just like, this will blah, blah, blah.
That's actually a really good point.
I'm not saying that it was, but it could be.
But I got to tell you, there's another component to this, and that it was scheduled 2 days before October 7th. Basically saying the people of Lebanon are facing a dire humanitarian situation. And it's like, no, that's true. They are. But there is a war going on. And for all the people who are divided on the issue of Israel, she's just basically fanning the flames of those tensions. Because I assure you, the pro-Israel people are like, why would she post this 2 days before the anniversary, October 7th?
Americans are still held hostage. There are still Americans being held by Hamas
there's 4,
today.
right?
Yeah, still today. So, I mean, the fact that and again, I totally agree with you. The people of Lebanon, they're suffering because of Hezbollah, because of Iran. But, I mean...
But it's a war between... look, all this is going to do is piss off the pro-Israel people who are being like, why are you giving money to the people we're at war with? And fine, by all means, humanitarian assistance we get, but 2 days before October 7th, I'm not saying it's the biggest point here, but it's just like, if you could ever craft a tweet and time it perfectly to sabotage your campaign, that would be... Is the October surprise Kamala Harris just basically tries resigning?
I think that she is surprised she is in the position she is surprised to find herself the presidential candidate. She's never been able to effectively message on the Middle East conflict at all. I mean, and part of it is because Democratic, especially progressive voters, are more divided on it than, their counterparts maybe on the right. I don't think thinks anything through. Like I said, I don't think she runs her own Twitter account. So someone else wrote this out. She doesn't take questions from the media. We're not even sure she knows it was posted. And again, I think it speaks to the fact that this is a very detached campaign. Fox News had this report over the weekend that since the Harris-Walz tickets form, so after Walz was named as the VP, they did something like 25 interviews, right? And they're starting to ramp that up now. During the same period of time, Trump and Vance did 63. So we have one campaign that is really trying to get their messaging to the people, that's really trying to talk about the issues. And we have another one that's sort of trying to coast on vibes and, hey, look, we're not Joe Biden, so feel the relief. It's not enough. They're not going to convert voters this way.
Well, and you don't have a message. When you saw just the clip from 60 Minutes, you saw what she said. She's just word salad after word salad. Here's my economic plan is to tax people, and the billionaires aren't paying enough, and which means everybody's going to pay.
That clip was brutal.
It was.
And he's like, yeah, we live in the real world.
The lighting looks bad on her, too. It's like they screwed up the lighting. They screwed up everything on her like they did with that other interview with Dana Bash.
I hope the deep state is it's a double conspiracy and they want Trump to win, because I accept that. Like, please, we cannot have Kamala Harris. There's
might be dark days.
There's the double conspiracy is that Trump is actually a part of the deep state. And the deep state's pretending that he's under fire so that people like Alex Jones and anti-government people flock to Trump, but then actually end up waving American flags. I'm just like, I hope that's really what's going on, because we cannot have 4 years of Kamala Harris.
Well, can he do... If he does half of what he says he's going to do, which he won't do, he'll probably get a quarter done of what he wants to do. It's still going to be better than what we're at now, which is digging ourselves in a rut and just leaving people out to dry. Like, the response to that hurricane is just savage, what they're doing to these people.
Even if he gets none of what he wants to do done, I'm serious. Right. Even if he gets none of what he wants to do and just prevents Democrat policies from being implemented, that's a win.
I got to one-up you. If Trump ends up doing 9 out of the 10 things that Kamala was going to do, it's still a win. It's so bad. The current administration, open borders, the wars are escalating dramatically. The wages adjusted for inflation are way down. People can't afford to buy groceries. If Trump was like, I'm going to leave everything as it is, but de-escalate wars, it's like, well, I guess we're better off.
I mean, it's not hard to.
But he's going to drill. He's going to. We're going to get cheaper gas at the end of this, and cheaper gas means everything else is cheaper.
Exactly. That alone is reason enough.
Well, that's big oil, but big oil is what runs the world at this point.
The arguments from the left, particularly the people that are against oil, they're the arguments of children. They're not serious. They're not adults. They don't think about the things they're talking about. If everything that we use is made with oil. So I'm all for Teslas. I'm getting a Tesla next year, I think. I love the S. Tim has sold me on them. They're great cars. I back them.
Abandon the Jeep gang.
They're commuter
How
cars.
could you?
They're great local cars. We drive them to DC and back with no issues. It's an hour drive or so. When we took Cybertruck up to Butler, we only needed to charge one time between here and Pittsburgh. We stopped twice just because we wanted to. Yeah. We were like, we might as well just, top it off. And then we got to, from Pittsburgh, fully charged to Butler, we were at 88%. And then we powered the War Room podcast. They plugged into Cybertruck, ran the show, and they had a Starlink on top for their backup internet. And then once the show was done, and we couldn't keep the Cybertruck there because you're not in all those cars, we ended up leaving. and I don't know, it was 80%. I mean, it was absolutely fantastic. I wouldn't recommend hauling serious stuff across the country with a Cybertruck, but for local back and forth stuff, it's super easy. Did you ever see that video where the guy is yelling at the environmental protesters? And he's like, everything you're wearing is made of oil. Your coats are made from oil. Like, what do you get rid of them?
I mean, we've said this on the show before, but if you were to stop using petroleum products, like 2/3 of the population of Earth dies, because all the chemicals that they use, or not the chemicals, but the fertilizers that they use to grow food, they're all petroleum based. So it's a ridiculous idea to say, oh, we need to get rid of oil and stuff.
Now, that's not to say we can't do things better.
Yes, 100%, 100%.
But you have to have an oil-based economy.
Yeah, it's the just stop oil people that
So
are
we
the
can
ones.
power it
Well,
on
and I
unicorn
feel like
farts.
environmentalism used to be the trendy countercultural movement of generations past, whereas now it sort of doesn't make sense. I mean, if you really care about oil or emissions, right, you would look at other countries that are really terrible in terms of these things and take them more seriously. Instead, it's always like, you know, the U.S. and Europe, you should probably ban your plastic straws, and that will fix
Meanwhile,
it.
India and China and
Right.
Shangri-La,
I mean,
they're just
let's not
dumping
forget
it in the
J.D.
ocean.
Vance in the debate saying if you were serious about the environment, you would move all manufacturing back to the U.S. where we have the cleanest economy. I mean, this is one of the criticisms with NAFTA, right? That there were all sorts of environmental emissions regulations, but Mexico never followed them and no one ever enforced it. And so therefore, it's just this thing that we do as a weird virtue signal and to give the government more things to regulate.
People forget that the most beneficial solutions are usually pro-America solutions, America first solutions.
I just got it. Did you say Shangri-La?
Shangri-La, yeah.
So I love that because for those that don't know, Shangri-La is an earthly paradise. And so I'm like, well, they maintain their earthly paradise by dumping all their garbage into the ocean. It's a fictional place in Tibet, and they're just dumping all their garbage so they can keep it clean.
You could go down the river.
That's right.
Have you seen some of there's some of these videos, they'll just show this rolling mound of plastic just going through a canal, and you're like, wow, that's what the uncivilized world is doing. And it's because they don't have it, they haven't set up systems to do that. And maybe we could do that instead of killing people.
I mean, but the crazy thing too is, look, humans build cities on rivers because they're water sources, and our rivers are dirty. I mean, name a city where you'd go into a downtown river and enjoy a swim.
No.
Well, you can in parts of Austin. Where the natural spring pops up and then flows into the river, which you don't go swimming. But that's only one little part.
It's messy, but so let me show you this real quick before we wrap up on this first part. This is FEMA. On October 4th, said $45 million would go to the Hurricane Helene survivors, continues to address critical needs. $45 million. Now, I'm hearing all these excuses from Democrats where they're like, well, that's what was allocated. It's just 157 was allocated to Lebanon. And I'm like, yeah, we're mad about it. What don't you get? Well, it's Republicans in Congress and it's the Democrats in Congress too. Democrats have the Senate. They can propose bills and send them to the House. House could do the same thing. Why, for the love of all that's holy, why aren't Republicans just having an emergency session or the speaker getting together and making a press conference saying, we need to get Congress back in here to allocate more funds? Republicans can put it on Democrats, or Democrats could do the same thing and put it on Republicans.
I think I said this the other day, but the very first day that the hurricane hit, the president and Kamala Harris, because they're one and the same, and the president is not with us, and the Speaker of the House and the majority leader of the Senate should have been calling for all of Congress to come back to make sure that there was funding. Mm-hmm. They were just on whatever they call it, leave or whatever. Bring them back and make them do their job for the American people.
Yeah.
Well, their solution seems to be because Mike Johnson said we need to give more money to FEMA. Is that going to really help? Do we really want bean counters going in there and trying to help people, or do we give it to the states?
To be honest with you, it's better than doing nothing.
Sure, but I think you give this money to the states and let them figure it out because they know how to fix their system.
But isn't North Carolina doing a crap job of it, if I understand correctly? And I'm talking about the North Carolina government.
The thing is, we shouldn't have gone to Lebanon is the thing. Lebanon's getting $157 million. North Carolina, Florida, Georgia should at least get double that.
At least. I mean, at least have people
Not a
going in
third.
there. When Hurricane Rita hit, 2007, it hit Southwest Louisiana where my parents lived. And within 2 days, the National Guard had gone through and cut, because 30% of the trees fell down in this area, went and cut all the roads out. They had everything bulldozed to the side so people could get through in 2 days. in 2 days. And they're saying they can't do that, and we're 2 weeks into this.
Again, I mentioned this just the other night. Look, during the Berlin airlift, they had an airplane landing in Berlin every 30 seconds.
In the 40s.
In the 40s. So don't tell me that we can't take care of the people that are suffering in North Carolina.
Okay, hold on, Phil. We can take care of the people that are suffering, just not in North Carolina. We got the story.
International.
We've got the story from the post-millennial Biden-Harris admin brags about keeping Ukraine's power on as Americans face outages. I'd like to just offer up a free public relations lesson for just a freebie. Just freebie. I mean, I could consult on this. My rate would be very high. But Biden-Harris and the White House, do not brag about giving millions of dollars of American taxpayer money to foreign countries when Americans are dying due to a lack of resources following natural disasters and with an impending Category 5 about to slam into Florida. Because I got to tell you, you might actually improve your favorability ratings if you heed my advice.
Maybe.
We got this quote. This is, let me read a little bit.
Samantha Powers? Is that it?
Yeah, Samantha Power. How Americans are helping Ukraine keep the lights and heat on despite Putin's attacks. There's a quote up there, and it says, I'm here in an energy substation in the western region of Ukraine. This substation provides enough power for around 500,000 residents of the area. I believe there's about 250,000 people who still need electricity in North Carolina. So you mean to tell me you're giving double the resources that we need for our own people in this country to Ukraine? Well, thank you.
It's all about rubbing it in our faces and saying Americans are worthless unless we accept the entire world into our home.
Bosom.
That's it. Accept them.
I just think people are tired of the Americans come second mentality, right? This idea that we have to put Lebanon and Ukraine and everybody else first. It was one thing when most of the country or a huge portion of the country wasn't in the middle of having to deal with a natural disaster. People were like, oh, we feel a moral obligation. But right now, people's neighbors, relatives, friends are suffering, and the federal government's priority is outside the country.
And even before, with these illegals going in and they're bringing them to different cities and just putting them into hotels and treating them better than the citizens who are homeless sitting outside.
Yeah.
And people see this, and then this hurricane response is just another cherry on top for people. They're just rubbing your face in it.
I love how we have this story. And it goes viral last week. It's, FEMA was spent $650 million on illegal alien resettlement in this country. And the Democrats immediately with their smug faces go, gotcha. That money wasn't from FEMA. It was only allocated by FEMA. And it's just like, I don't think the substance of our complaints is any different.
Yeah,
the federal government as an entire institution is either giving money to non-citizens or sending it overseas. I don't care which pool of money it came from. They say it was CBP allotted fundings for resettlement. Why are we giving CBP $500 million for resettlement and FEMA not having more? And why can't we get anyone in government to, do something? Biden could come out right now and do a press conference and say, it's time to act. We need emergency action right now. And so we will be taking funds from A, B, or C to help these people.
And it'd bring his favorability rating up from the basement.
It would. But you know what? Here's my conspiracy theory. Harris is trying to lose. Okay. She wants to lose. And the media is just pretending like the media wants her to win, but, the Democrats want her to win. And her and Biden are like, we are done. We are out. Because I cannot believe any sane person running for president would do the things they're doing right now.
Unless they're really out of touch, right? I mean, this is what I have always wondered about the staff supporting Kamala Harris. If you are the most progressive candidate, you get selected, you're the most progressive Democrat that was running, now you're the most progressive VP that's been there, and you select staffers who are also therefore supportive of your ideals, who do not seem to have any kind of empathy for the average American, let alone conservative Americans, you must look at the world and say everything they're talking about is ridiculous. My priorities are the only ones that matter. There's no ability to relate to anyone else, so they cannot script her in a way that makes her relatable to an independent or moderate voter. They don't know what those people want, and they don't really care.
That's true. They're speaking to their base, and 30% of the people I think are their base. No problem.
I think it might be scarier than all this. It may be them saying we can literally do anything we want because we control your elections.
That's what I'm afraid of.
And we control your media, who will tell you what the election results are, whether you like it or not.
There's enough people. There are enough people that are normies that are not politically engaged, that still vote because they believe it's their sacred right to vote, even though they intentionally remain ignorant about policy and and world events. But there are enough people that they can just put MSNBC and NBC and CBS, put the narrative out to those major news networks, and they will be able to influence enough people to win the vote. We know that it's down to, maybe 250,000 people in a handful of states are going to decide the actual election. Everybody else is basically, has already made their decision. They've already, there's not going to be a significant event that's going to change people's minds, or at least it's unlikely.
Maybe Florida.
Well, I don't even know about that, but I hope that what is going on in North Carolina would. But I don't feel confident in that, because I thought that the Trump assassination attempt would, and I was literally blown away when I saw how many people are like, oh no, Trump staged that. Yeah. Like, a dude died, man. Like, a dude died and 2 other dudes got shot, and like, they're just like, no, he staged it. That was a fake thing. There was no gun, there was no shooter. Like, you could see his body on the roof the same day. And they're like, no, it was all staged. So I'm not convinced that there's a significant number of people that put a lot of thought into it. I said last Friday, I think most people vote with emotions. Even people that think that they don't vote with emotions, I think they mostly do. And this is why I've lost the knee-jerk support of democracy. Not that there's anything better. It's just that you can't democracy is no guarantee for a good outcome. It's just a guarantee that there's a majority outcome. And if the majority is selecting the outcome, you have a smaller chance of the people freaking out and rioting. And
democracy is no good. Democratic institutions, I would say a constitutional republic with democratic electoral processes seem to function well, but we have a rather complicated system of governance. 3 branches, checks and balances. We've got state level governance, federal level governance.
It's made not to move fast. It's made to be slow and methodical, and so things get planned out right, but they don't, obviously. So people have taken that model, and it's been turned, I think, on its head of what it should be.
Yeah.
This representational form of government. It used to be you had to be a landowner to vote, and I'm kind of you have skin in the game. You have skin in the game, and if you are just being a wage slave working and living in an apartment, do you have as much invested in what's going on around you as a guy who owns 3 farms and who's feeding 1,300 people in his community? You don't. And so should his vote count more? I don't know.
Back in the day, it made sense when we were talking about a community voting on what matters to them. So it's like, do you live here was the question. Once we get into the time of rentals, then I think it makes sense to say, no, just not landowners. The idea of some kind of restriction to make sure that people are voting who have skin in the game makes a lot of sense. Right now, the problem we have is you can move to an area. Heck, you can probably apply for a mail-in vote in a place you don't even live. This is the crazy thing, that there are people who live somewhere and move, and they still get a mail-in ballot. Yep. There are people who have gotten mail-in ballots to other states for a different state. And there are people who, this was Andrew Yang, said, I'm going to move to Georgia so I can influence the election, then leave. And it's like, what? What is the point? Is that democracy?
Right.
I'm going to show up. I don't live here, but I get to vote on how you live your life and then leave.
There's no rule saying I can't do it, so I'm going to do it, even though it doesn't seem right. Why would you act like that?
If democracy was honored, if it was among honorable and noble men, and I mean men in the grand sense of humanity. So this is like, if women and men of good honor, we're going to have a vote on things, then I think it could work. Where you basically have everyone gets together and they say, let's all discuss things calmly and rationally. The only problem is humans are not a calm and rational entity. There are a lot of people who are just downright stupid and angry. And then that gets thrown into the mix. And then you get too much of that, you get chaos. So there has to be some degree, some restriction on how we vote. And I think it should be simple. We take one little old hurdle, just one. We put it right in front and say, do you really want to vote? We're going to make it a little difficult, but not really that difficult. And then guess what happens? Most people say, nah, I don't want to jump over that hurdle.
Takes too much effort.
Too much effort. And if it takes too much effort for you to consider, like getting an ID, for instance, then maybe you shouldn't vote.
Most people are familiar with the man on the street stuff that Jimmy Kimmel's done, right? Yeah. That's your average voter. Yeah. The people that don't know the difference between a continent and a country.
I don't believe that.
You don't think so?
No, it's all edited to make people look really dumb.
I think when you ask people questions about politics, and when you ask them questions about current events, average people that are generally intelligent, they will fall to that level.
I tried doing some man on the street stuff when I was working for Fusion and found that it was completely a waste of time. Because unless you're there all day intending on finding stupid people to fabricate your narrative, the average person is of average intelligence, as you'd expect. Meaning, if you say something like, what's a country, what's a continent? If you got someone who didn't know, they'd be like, oh man, honestly, it's been a long time since I've dealt with this stuff. I work in accounting, so I don't really go over geography. I sound like an idiot. I'm sorry. And then you're like, well, I can't use that. You need someone to sound like a moron.
Confidently sound like a moron.
Exactly. And
you need a one-liner blip that you can throw in.
A lot of these man in the street stuff, they do target people who they think are going to be stupid. And because that makes the average, here, I'll put it this way. The average person is average. The average person watching a video needs to feel like they're a smart person, not an average person. So they target the back end of the bell curve and then show that to average people so they feel like they're smart.
Fair enough, but I think that we all can agree that most people are disengaged. We all know that the number of the portion of the population that shows like this and shows like stuff that the Daily Wire produces, they're targeting a very narrow section of the population that are politically engaged. You're talking about 5% on the high end, maybe 10, right? Maybe. And you're trying to get 50 to 60% of the population to vote is like a 50% voter turnout is really, really good.
I mean, we see this with midterm elections, right?
Yeah, exactly.
It's always lower. People are more engaged during national elections.
Maybe you have to vote in midterms. Sorry to cut you off. Maybe you have to vote in midterms to be allowed to vote in the presidential election.
Right, you have to consistently participate.
Yeah.
Ballots are blank.
You have to have a punch card.
Now there you go.
Ballots are blank.
There you go.
Anybody can vote. Everybody vote. No IDs required, but ballots are blank.
You have to
Blank
know
ballots.
who you're voting for.
John Smith is running.
And you have to
in
know
so
who to
many
vote
races.
for.
And for which position, too. And you got to spell their name right.
Sally
Well, let me do this.
Oh, easy, Tiger. Spell their name right. Come on, man.
So we got this from the Daily Beast. Call Her Daddy faces backlash over propaganda Harris interview. Some fans of the hugely popular podcast are angry that the vice president did not address the devastation caused by Hurricane Helene. Interesting. Well, how many of you are you guys familiar with the Call Her Daddy podcast?
Tim looks directly at me. Yeah.
Well, you were looking at me. I don't know.
No, I'm just kidding. I'm being singled out because I'm female. I'm familiar with it. It's not one that I listen to, but it is definitely targeted at a young female audience.
So there's this clip going viral where it's basically Alex Cooper, the host, talking with a woman about, like women doing things with women that are of adult nature. And they're like, it's funny because people are saying Donald Trump declined to go on the show. And I'm like, gee, why would Donald Trump decline to go on a women's sex podcast? Could you imagine if I was like, hey, Donald Trump, I got a skateboard podcast. Do you want to come on and talk about skateboarding and Magic the Gathering? He'd be like, no. I'd be like, oh, how dare you?
Well, you know what, though, he can maybe help you sell even more of those. That would be the one thing I think he could add to the equation.
I'm actually surprised Trump said no because he's like, I'll go on anything. Yeah. But, we were just talking about this in the other segment about how most people are disengaged. And so I asked you, good Sir Phil, you were saying that we're trying to get people engaged. Call Her Daddy and the podcast with Kamala is what happens when you try to get people who don't know or care what's going on engaged. They say really dumb things and then vote for really bad stuff.
Yes, I agree totally. And I don't know that I think we should be trying to get people engaged. I think we should be trying to convince people that are not engaged that they shouldn't vote. Like if you're not engaged,
like the opposite of a voter turnout campaign.
Look, man, Rock the Vote was the dumbest thing that ever happened on MTV, and they came up with like reality television.
They got Clinton elected.
They did.
So let me show you guys a clip from her podcast, and you can understand why there's a backlash. Let it begin.
I want to pose this question more to you and the Daddy Gang, but one of the biggest conversations in this year's election revolves around a woman's body.
Mm-hmm. Yep.
I want to take a moment. And can we try to think of any law that gives the government the power to make a decision?
I know what you're going to ask.
About a man's body.
The Selective Service Act. Anyway, continue, Alex Cooper.
No.
Is there any law?
No.
Weren't they mandating things a while back?
Zuby had a really great thread where he said that, and shout out to Zuby, you guys should follow him. He said that men, I'll give you a paraphrase. Men are told the truth all the time. No one has any sympathy for men. They don't care. If a guy is overweight and ugly, they're going to say, you're short, overweight, and ugly. We don't care about you. But women get lied to all the time by women and men. Men who are trying to hook up and women who are trying to push them out of competition or just avoid conflict. So you end up with stuff like this. Alex Cooper hosts a show where she discusses like general interest topic stuff for women, dating, sex, sexuality. Those are her words. She interviews the vice president and current Democratic candidate for the election coming up in less than a month, and she never Google searched this. And so she's got millions of listeners and millions of followers, and she may as well be drooling into the microphone. Okay, I'm sorry. Okay, voting should not be easy. Voting should not be hard, but it should not be easy. I think ballots should be blank. That's it. You can go vote. You don't need an ID, paper ballots, and they're blank. You get a blank sheet of paper and it says, write down the candidate, write the position they're running for, and that's your vote. And guess what? Every single one of Alex Cooper's listeners would go to the voting booth, look at the piece of paper, and go, I got no idea what's going on.
I can't pass this test. I'm out.
Yeah, I'm out.
I think this is an embarrassing moment, but beyond the fact that she couldn't think of the draft as something that would affect men exclusively, I think it's embarrassing that these are two women who are being sold to American girls as girl bosses, right? Alex Cooper sold her show to Spotify for something like $250 million. And she is reading scripted questions that were provided by Kamala Harris's campaign about abortion as if there were no other issues that impact women, right? She's a businesswoman. She's worth $250 million at least. Is she going to ask about capital gains tax? Is she going to ask about illegal immigration? No. They keep women siloed to this one issue, and it's, I think, to keep them kind of compliant and stupid.
As a podcast nerd myself, having run a podcast business, her deal was over several years, and the trick is, my friends, I'll let you in on some inside baseball. When you hear that someone scored this big contract, it's a $10 million contract. What they're not telling you is how much of that was compensation. Because the tricks they do is they'll say, here's what we're going to do. We're going to pay you $2 million a year. So you'll get over 3 years, $6 million cash. We'll put $50 million per year into advertising Spotify with you as a feature in it, which is a $150 million value. Thus, you have a $156 million contract. And then we're going to announce it to everybody. It makes you sound really famous and popular, and the marketing will be good for you, and you'll be in Times Square. And they go, deal. But we don't know how much money she actually got out of that deal.
But the podcast is only part of her brand. Like first, she got this whole deal with, it was Barstool first, then to Spotify. I think it was on Sirius at one point. She's also built her platform as an influencer. So she makes however much money off of every brand deal. I mean, there is no doubt that this is a multimillionaire. And the only thing that she could come up to, or at least be told by the Harris campaign that women are interested in, is what? Abortion and being mad at men? Doesn't that seem like it's a disservice to all women?
So it was her deal.
Though.
Her deal was $125 million over 3 years. So about 40 some odd million per year. How much of that is stock? How much of that is marketing guarantees? How much of that is in some way deferred? How much is direct compensation? How much of that is staffing? You know, it's these deals sound like they're making tons of money, but you are right. Her Instagram is $3 million. She's selling that. She's probably making, let me just do some quick math. What, $20 million, $30 million a year cash? Nah, I think she's probably doing more than 30. She might be doing $50 million a year. I don't know how much of that is going to go into her production costs and everything, but I'd imagine probably $50 million a year sounds about right.
Right, plus the merch, plus the tour. I think her wedding,
that's all of it.
And her wedding was featured in Vogue. I mean, like, there are tons of ways this person is making money that are not accessible to, you know, the average political podcaster or something else, which is totally fine. Like, she built an empire. I just go back to the fact that, you know, normally, and I don't watch her show, but I have seen clips, she's on like a couch and wearing full sweatpants. And for Kamala Harris, she has heels on, is in some sort of stiffer chair, and is taking questions that Kamala Harris has pre-agreed to answer. To me, it's like she's not even sticking by the values that seem to build up her empire.
Hold on. Alex Cooper said they were not pre-scripted and nothing was off limits.
I don't believe her at all. Do you believe
I do.
that?
Yeah, I think Alex Cooper is, with all due respect, she's a savvy business person who is the best at what she does, and that is certainly not politics. So, look, I got to be honest. If I said, Phil, you've played Magic before, right? Have you kept up with Magic the Gathering?
Not lately, but
I would like you to interview the current world champion of Magic the Gathering. I'm not worried about any scandalous questions.
No.
Because you wouldn't know what scandals there are going on to even ask. You'd say things like, what are the new cards that are coming out? Is there anything I should know? What's the most valuable card right now? This all she knows, Alex Cooper, is that she wants to get an abortion. So they knew going in, they didn't need to give her any preset questions. She's going to ask about abortion and some other garbled nonsense because she doesn't fact check anything. And it's not her job to. She's a sex gossiper, like sex and commentary and gossip. And I'm not trying to say that disparagingly. I'm saying she's the best at what she does, but that's her space. I mean, I'm not going to go on her show and try and school her on any of this stuff because I got no idea, right? And she's talking about women who want to go down on each other or whatever. I'm not kidding. And like, that's what she does. I'll be like, hey, that's your territory, man.
Look, and she made tons of money doing it. I mean, it's not that she has not been successful in her field. I mean, maybe you're right. Maybe they just knew she wasn't going to ask anything of substance and she was going to stick to all of the sort of basic, these impact women talking points. I just think it's a missed opportunity. I mean, if this is really, I think that I read this quote from one of the interview where she says, I just couldn't imagine an election where women's rights were a major talking point and I wasn't involved. If you are the savior of women, why did you do such a bad job?
Abortion is the fifth issue. I gotta say, when Tim Waltz,
groceries is number one.
Number one, immigration and wages, like economic factors dominate. Abortion is like, what is it? Like 6% or some ridiculously small number?
The only reason, the only reason abortion does what, or they continue to talk about abortion, is because it's a fear tactic. They're trying to scare women that are, generally thinking, what if I might need an abortion? That's why it goes for, even women that are married or women that are, in committed relationships that wouldn't have an abortion. Like, they still use it to convince them because the situation is, well, what if you needed one? What if you got...
But they never fix that problem. They never go, we're going to make it legal or illegal. It's always... Well, we'll just kind of keep it up in the air so we can use it as an election issue. We can bring more people to the polls and go, oh, they're going to take away your rights to go.
Right, and it's not abortion anymore. It's women's rights, which they then tag on
women's
to everything.
healthcare.
Right after Roe was repealed, it was or overturned. It was, well, it's not just abortion; it's the birth control pill. Oh, well, it's not just the birth control pill; it's fertility treatments. I mean, it became this ever expansive issue, which is very fear based. Like, what if you need these things? What are you going to do if they maybe take them away in the future? But again, like if this is the big women's podcast of our generation. I get that maybe you would devote a little bit of time to this, but why did you miss all the other major issues? What about all the women who are listening to you who are like, wow, Alex, you're an amazing businesswoman. I want to do that too one day. Why wouldn't you ask about the economy? Why wouldn't you ask about housing? Like,
that's one thing Kamala knows about is her small business plan. You think they would have talked about that?
Yes, her opportunity economy.
Yeah, ridiculous.
So here, pop quiz hot shots. Call Her Daddy released a segment with the Kamala Harris, from the Kamala Harris interview on her show on YouTube. How many views did she get in 24 hours on her mega Kamala Harris interview?
6 million.
Yeah, on YouTube. You said 6 million?
Yeah.
What do you say, Phil? You're not cheating, are you?
No.
Looking up Call Her Daddy podcast.
I have not.
And subscribe.
I'm going to go with 10.
10 views? 10 million.
10 million.
Are you guys joking?
I feel like I'll give it like 100,000 maybe.
260,000.
Wow, I totally overblew that one.
All right.
Yeah.
Wow.
But that says a lot.
That's actually a good sign.
So here's the Call Her Daddy podcast, which look, I gotta say this is really
That's not the whole
interesting.
interview. That's the clip.
Is that overall?
The whole interview is not up.
Is that over all the platforms? So like
No.
Spotify?
On YouTube, a segment was released from the Kamala Harris interview. It's 8 minutes long. It got 260,000 views, but it's titled Vice President Kamala Harris on her channel. It's not the full thing. They put up a clip. It's really fascinating to me when I see this. I do believe that I think the podcast industry, like most industries, is fake and manipulation of stupid people by anyone who's willing to actually play that game. So Call Her Daddy has 981,000 subscribers. That's actually that's considered not a big channel on YouTube. And I'm not. And look, we have 2 million here on Timcast IRL. We're considered a medium to large. I'm not kidding. In the industry, when people are talking, it's like, oh, you're like a medium to large size. The larger podcasts have 7, 8 million or more, 10 million on YouTube. I'm not talking specifically about podcasts, but to do an interview with Kamala Harris and only get 260K in a day, that is shocking. That's actually really surprising. That's why I asked you guys.
Did they post this on X?
I don't know. I don't know. I'm just saying for YouTube because I know YouTube numbers.
Right. Well, X, I think it would be more
remarkably
inflated. I think I was thinking X. That would be an X number. Would be 6 million.
I assume that it would have gotten a lot of shares on like your mainstream media news.
I'm sure it did
and stuff like
I'm
that.
Sure and audio side is interesting. So I'll tell you what's really fascinating about the media industry while we're here, because I'm such a nerd on this stuff. We research it every day. We live it every single day running a podcast. What are the numbers, the ratings for top shows? Now, historically, television shows, cable shows, news shows have always released their ratings, telling you here's how many people we believe watch. On YouTube, on Instagram, on X, every single one of these platforms, they all tell you what the ratings are. It is forward-facing. Podcasts are the only systems, for whatever reason, that obfuscate their true ratings.
But you know why? Because
it's
they count subscribers as automatic listeners. That's one thing. So if you subscribe to a podcast, they're like, well, they already listened to it. They subscribed to it because it went to their folder, so we call that a view.
It's very weird how the podcast industry works, in that you can look at Apple Podcasts right now, and I'm gonna give you guys some deep lore right here. iTunes was the biggest in the game for a long time. Currently, YouTube has taken over as the #1 podcasting platform, which is nuts. It's kind of crazy. Spotify has just skyrocketed to second place, and iTunes has collapsed down to third place. Of the big 3 places to consume podcasts, iTunes is actually way down, which is interesting because Apple Podcasts...
They kind of folded into music too, didn't they?
That's probably part of the problem.
I think that's part of the thing. Yeah.
Well, I can tell
Music
you,
sucks.
most people who watch our show on the audio side I should say are listening on Apple Podcasts.
Right.
So that's why I say, if you're listening on Apple Podcasts, leave us a good review, because we never ask, and we should. But the fascinating thing is, I think the numbers are way worse than people realize. And I think people are making assumptions about how big these shows are. What I can tell you is, I don't know where we're at now, but 6 or so years ago, the #1 podcast was Joe Rogan. And on the audio side, I could be totally wrong. I don't know anything about Joe. I believe it was around 1 million downloads per episode. And then the second and third were like 500, 300, and then it drops significantly from there. It's an exponential gain. The top podcast got overwhelmingly the most, and then you go down. I can tell you this. There was a point where the Tim Pool Morning Show was the 34th biggest podcast in the world. And that was when I did a show every day, no days off, and before Timcast IRL existed. How many views do you think we got per episode as the peak position number 34 in the world?
What year?
This is let's say 5 years ago.
5 years ago.
5 years ago. And this is when Apple was, really, really big. And Tim Pool Morning Show, which for those that don't know, it's my morning monologuing show.
Covering news and...
Right. So number 34 in the world. What do you guys think per episode?
220.
220? No guesses?
I don't know.
75,000.
Wow.
75,000 views on a 2-hour show, and we were ranked number 34. And I know, because I worked with other networks, and when we did ad stuff, that some of the top 5 were getting a couple 100,000. Timcast IRL does 300 overnight. We went a Friday night. The one you have is like 350 already.
Because people love Brimcast?
People love
Is that what you're
Brimcast.
telling me?
Well, my point of bringing all this stuff up is the media, the corporate press, pretends that these shows are massive, and they do these deals because this is what they want people to strive for, to get these big deals. And then you don't see Timcast IRL or even Daily Wire shows featured in any of these big networks, even though the Daily Wire show's audio set are massive, and Timcast IRL, right? I will say this. I got to pause. Timcast IRL is currently featured on the front on YouTube's live front page. So you go to YouTube Live, boom, Timcast IRL is playing, Temple Morning Show is playing. Thank you, YouTube, for whatever reason.
That's the first time in years. I mean, this was
have
not standard for a long time.
Honestly, I don't know. What I can tell you is, in the past week, people messaged us being like, "Hey, you guys are being featured on YouTube Live." Like, if YouTube has a default live player when you go to YouTube Live, and it's us, and I was like,
I think
shout out YouTube.
YouTube wants Alex Jones back secretly. Maybe that's what it is. So
they made a lot of money off him.
Oh, they did. Of
course they did.
They were showing background stuff, and it was billions of views with what he was doing back in before it was, before YouTube was crazy.
But you know what happened? It was Wall Street Journal. They launched the Adpocalypse,
Right.
where they started targeting YouTube relentlessly.
Sleeping giants.
Yes.
Yeah.
But Wall Street Journal was running these stories
Yeah.
saying that YouTube is running ads alongside the likes of Alex Jones and other far right. The advertisers said, we don't know what you're doing or why. We don't want to be involved. And before that, advertisers were happy.
They didn't care because they were getting the numbers.
The sales were working. This is crazy. We can go back 7 years. It used to be, let's say 7 years ago. 7 years ago, you could, let's go back 10 years. 1 cent per view. You're an advertiser. You got a brand new product. You could put $1 on YouTube and get 100 views on your product. Sales were cheap to get. Then the adpocalypse happened. YouTube got attacked relentlessly, and they said, you need to delete all of these channels, namely Alex Jones. They were like, 100 million views a month? We don't want ads appearing on that, and we're going to attack you and attack your stock until you get rid of it. And this shattered YouTube inventory. YouTube used to have too many videos to advertise on, so the cost per ad was 1 cent.
Wow.
Now, if you wanted a premium position, like I want to be on CNN or whatever big
you
network,
pay the premium.
that could be upwards of $40,
Right.
For per thousand. Sorry. Now you're not really going to get those numbers anymore because the adpocalypse wiped everything out, and YouTube started started banning tons of channels, and so now you're left with what you're left with, I guess. But anyway, long story short, my point in all this is the reason why I showed the Call Her Daddy at 260K. This stuff is not popular, okay? When they put WAP and all these nasty songs where like Lil Nas X is banging the devil and stuff, and they want to tell you this is popular, it is to a certain degree, but it's artificially being inflated because they want to control the cultural narrative. So they say the biggest podcast, it's number one. Well, I got to tell you, if you look at Apple, Call Her Daddy is number one. If you look at Spotify, it's, I think, number 10. I could be wrong. It could be higher than that. But on Spotify, Joe Rogan, Tucker Carlson, I think Ben Shapiro dominate the top. And Spotify has taken over for where people are getting their podcasts. So I just want to wrap that up by saying, don't believe all of this stuff is culturally dominant. It is being manufactured to convince you are the underdog and you are on the outside. When in fact, I think X shows how true things really are. Every single time I see a pollster, like there's like they'll be like, who are you voting for?
Crescent clone poll. Yeah.
It's just boom, Trump. And then everyone says, well, it's because X is a right-wing platform. Yeah. Since when? Like, do you really expect me to believe that 70 million liberals quit X and 70 million conservatives joined X when Elon Musk bought it?
No.
Don't buy it for a second.
No, because they didn't launch an alternative. I mean, when
maybe
people,
let a couple million accounts back on.
Right. Well, when people were getting kicked off of X, I mean, obviously there's Truth Social, but we saw a rise of alternative where people were like, X is not allowing free speech. Elon Musk bought it, and I don't know of any liberals who were like, "Please join us on our alternative to."
They tried to go to Blue Sky. There was the attempt to make Mastodon a thing, which didn't work because that's too complex for your average journalist. Then there was Blue Sky, which I think was Dorsey's attempt to do a liberal Twitter or whatever. I think Threads has some viewerships or some
Oliver Darcy's
users.
on Threads.
Oh, good.
Yeah. Threads is like auto-posting people's stuff there.
I hate it. They take my posts from Instagram and they put them onto Threads.
I want to jump to this Elon story real quick, but I do want to say one thing. Guys, everyone is manipulating you. It's the name of the game. And so when it comes to ad sales, everybody's lying about everything. They're trying to find ways to make it seem like they're bigger than they are so they can blame the advertiser if the product won't move. It's a struggle, it is. I want to say one thing as particularly. I was at the Butler rally. It was awesome. We brought Cybertruck. We had to power the War Room podcast. And I saw something from Elon Musk. He tweeted something like 12 million live viewers. Twitter changed their viewer metric on live streams from concurrent to total viewership. And they did it in such a way that your average person doesn't know. So when we on IRL did a live stream on X and it got 800,000 views, we had people hitting us up like crazy saying, you had 800,000 people watching live. Why aren't you only going on X? And I'm like, no, that is not what happened. We had 800,000 total viewers and the retention rate for X is very low. The concurrent rate was moderate. I think we had 17,000 concurrent viewers. They changed it. And for this reason, in my opinion, and I'm a fan of Elon Musk, but when he tweets 12 million live viewers, or when people say something like, wow, 1 million people are watching, 1 million people watched. But I got to tell you, in the industry right now, talking with some of the big shots at various networks, they are pissed that Elon Musk did this because it is basically like a dirty play. It's like, what would you describe it? It's angle shooting in poker.
Way to pull more money out of the advertising.
So all the other networks are sitting here being like, we can't change our concurrent metric the way he did. It's because then people get false assumptions about viewership size and ad sales, and it's disruptive to our market. But Elon did. So when you go live on X, that number where it shows a little person and the number is going up is your total viewership and not your concurrent viewership, which are two different numbers. But then people believe that, oh man, I better go on X because I get way more viewers. Then you look in the back end, you look in your studio, and you're like, oh, it's actually a lot less.
And part of the reason is because people know YouTube is where like people get used to going to the same place. So like when people think of Timcast or IRL, they're going to go to YouTube because that's where they're familiar with it. And it's a similar phenomenon when it comes to like concerts, like shows, underground shows. If you have a venue that consistently hosts hardcore bands or metal bands, everyone knows, oh, I hear this band's going on tour. Let me check the venue I know that has those bands to see if they're coming to my town. If for some reason they're at a venue that doesn't normally host those bands, people will oftentimes miss the tour or whatever.
Yep. Let's jump to this story from the Post-Millennial. Elon Musk says the reason Kamala has so much powerful support is because Epstein client list will come out under Trump. This is epic. See, and I'm critical of Elon where I think I need to be, but I'm a huge fan, and this is an epic takedown of what is he talking? Reid Hoffman and Bill Gates.
Will that ever come out? Do you think? I think part of why Kamala's getting so much support is that if Trump wins, that Epstein client list is going to become public. Yeah.
That's awesome.
And some of those billionaires behind Kamala are terrified of that outcome.
Yeah. Do you think Reid Hoffman's uncomfortable?
Yes.
Wow.
And Gates.
And
Gates.
Yeah.
And I only ask that because you just look at them and you're like, that's a nervous person right there. I don't know. I mean, I assume you know them. Yeah.
Yes. Reid Hoffman was my vice president of business development at PayPal.
Yeah.
Oh my God.
Oh, wow.
4 years ago.
Does he seem nervous to you?
Yeah, I mean, he's terrified of a Trump victory.
Because of the disclosure that would follow?
I think he's certainly ideologically not aligned with Trump anyway, but I think he is concerned about the Epstein situation.
There you go. Gates and Hoffman and many others are concerned that Trump is going to release that information. He said he would.
Oh, yeah.
Trump said he would do it.
Well, now you got the 1-2 punch. You got Diddy and Epstein.
You don't have to even really like Trump at all to want Trump to win just because of the things that would happen under a Trump presidency. You can hate Trump all you want. But like if the client list is going to come out, you know that generally the economy is probably going to do better because it's a better, a more friendly business environment than a Harris presidency would be. The likelihood is the cost of gas is going to go down. The cost of everything else will likely go down because of the increased production of fossil fuels and
Right.
It's just the list of things that are likely to happen under a Trump presidency, completely and totally independent of Donald Trump himself. Like, it's enough reason to be like,
Right.
I want Trump to win.
You can have economic reasons for wanting to vote for Donald Trump, but the reality is, if you do not like the way things are right now, meaning that there is no transparency on the Epstein situation, that things are very expensive, that people are generally pretty hopeless, that people are concerned about crime and schools and increasing tensions out where you wouldn't then vote for the current VP. You need to vote for Trump, which is this fascinating position that he's in because he is both an experienced president and also the alternative to the current situation. There's one other president in history, right, that's been able to do this where he didn't serve. He served twice, but not consecutively. Right. And I actually think in this case, that is one of the reasons that there are a lot of people who don't necessarily love Trump, but look at Kamala Harris as an extension of the Biden and therefore the Obama and therefore the overarching DNC machine that has kept them in the dark and kept them paying for a lot of stuff. And they're kind of frustrated with it.
Well, and it's interesting to see how the billionaires are drawing sides, because there's some billionaires that are for Trump, but not too many. There's not too many billionaires that are for Trump. It seems to be the average man, because they want to see what's behind the curtain, because we've been hearing about, how long have we been hearing about Epstein?
Yeah.
15 years. Now we have this Diddy stuff, which has been out there. If you were looking for the seeds that were being planted.
Eminem.
Yeah, what was that Eminem lyric? He's like, R-A-P-E-R. Did I just spell rapper without the P, Diddy?
Yeah.
Or something like that. And it's like, oh, whoa.
There's a lot of stuff. And I think this whole indictment, the original indictment by the DOJ, was just to grab all the evidence and hide it. And hopefully there's copies out there. But to keep that out of the limelight while this, so there's no October surprise of, oh, now we have videos and names.
Yeah, I mean, the judge said that the reason that he was withholding the client list is because of the damage to society, or essentially the damage to society that it would do if the list got out, and that is a completely and totally ridiculous reason to.
Right. It's like when Biden says, oh, well, Biden and Harris both say, oh, well, we're not going to go tour the impacted areas, the areas impacted by Hurricane Helene, because we don't want to interrupt emergency services, right? Like, all presidents are able to pull this off somehow without being a distraction from emergency services. It seems like perhaps you just don't want to. And so therefore you have come up with some sort of fake altruistic excuse. The judge is saying, oh, I don't want to, what it could do to society. But actually what it means is like, I don't want to have to deal
My name's on that list.
Right. And I don't want to deal with the fact that you'll find out that I took donations from whoever. Like, there are all kinds of ways people are self-serving in the name while pretending to be there for the people.
This song's from 2024 called Fuel. Eminem and JID, and one of the lyrics is, I'm like a R-A-P-E-R, got so many essays. Wait, he didn't just spell the word rapper and leave out a P, did he? Rest in peace, R.I.P., rest in peace, Biggie. Yeah, he's saying it outright.
I mean, there's been a lot of rumors that have gone around for a long time. It's not something that is foreign to people in the rap or the music business world.
And this is why so many prominent pop stars just came out in support of Kamala Harris. Look, a lot of people, like Taylor Swift comes out and she's just like, I'm going to vote for Harris. And it was kind of, I don't know, flaccid. Like, she didn't make a very strong case for it, just made her post with a dog or with her cat or whatever. And then you had a couple other people say, well, I think Jojo Siwa was like, what did she say? Like, it's so great of you to endorse, but didn't endorse directly. But then you had...
Billie Eilish endorsed her.
Billie Eilish.
Sort of lackluster.
You had the most aggressive, I think, was Haley Williams of Paramore, who walks up to the camera and then just spits this, like, misinformation spiel. Donald Trump's Project 2025 wants to take the rights away from women, poor people, LGBTQ. And a lot of people were like, I bet she's on Diddy's list. And I'm like, no. She's not.
She's not.
Her label, maybe. Her manager, maybe. Somebody who's in an organizational position above her music probably said, hey, go do this. Because the people behind the scenes of the labels, are connected to Diddy and whatever it is Diddy was doing. And so they're pulling all the stops, you know what I mean?
It's Clive Davis to Diddy and everybody in between.
Yeah.
But again, it speaks to the elitism.
You don't want to be in between.
Oh, gosh. But it speaks to this elitism that I think Americans are more so than ever aware of right now, that our system would work to protect Epstein and Diddy and, other people, but it wouldn't work to protect actual Americans, let's say impacted by a hurricane. Yeah. I think there is a frustration there. And we were talking earlier about voters who, like, how do you reach them? Are they low IQ, or are they just not interested in politics? I think there is a level of, Phil had mentioned on Friday, people vote with their gut, but when their gut tells them they are being abused, they don't want to stick with the current system. I think you'll see voters who won't necessarily be suddenly engaged with politics, but they will say, this is not good and I don't like it, and that will make them turn out. Not all of them, but I think there is the emotional reaction of, I'm done with this. You are treating me badly. I don't want to do this anymore.
I hope. I mean, that would be a wonderful, development. Mm-hmm. But I don't know that I believe there are enough people in the movable.
Well, it's something like 5%, right? It's something like 5% are actually truly undecided voters. They'll say 10, but really that includes a percentage that leans right or leans left. And so the question is, for all of those polls, are you polling just people in America who have the right and the ability to vote, or people who are likely voters. Likely voters are different than people who are absolutely never politically engaged, even though they are, they could be legally registered and everything else. They just won't do it. But you can't really count on them to suddenly wake up anyway. So again, it goes after this likely voter who is truly undecided, and that is sort of a unicorn. And I think it makes sense that both sides of the aisle are now sort of messaging to their own people why Kamala Harris would go on a podcast and be like, abortion is such a big issue, because that's how she sort of soft launched her debut on the stage. Anyways, I don't know if you remember this, but there was a point, Biden was still running, but there was a point where they're like, she's going to go on a national abortion tour, which I thought was funny because it was like, go away, Kamala, get out of the White House and do something. But it was sort of the only issue she had tied to her name that she was willing to talk about. Of course, she has ties to the border, but she doesn't want to talk about that, all kinds of stuff. But she don't
want to talk about law and order.
No, doesn't want to talk about. She'll talk about how he's a felon, she's a prosecutor, but she doesn't want to talk about what she did as a prosecutor. Right. I mean, she has a history she wants to walk away from. But again, I think we're far enough down the path. We're less than 30 days out from the election. The idea that you would really convert that last 2% of voters is unlikely. You just now need to make sure the people who are likely to vote, who have voted for you in the past, really are going to turn out to the polls. And I think Harris has a much harder time with that than Trump does right now.
I don't think there's that many undecided at this point. I think people have made up their minds, and I think they're listening to their pocketbook. And, those that are brainwashed, and they think that there's going to be some other, there's another carrot in front of them, and they're going to go with that. But I think it's a lot. If it's an honest election, which we know it won't be, but I can't see Trump not winning or something crazy.
I don't think it's going to be crazy at all. I think it's just the federal government has been putting its finger on the scale since 2016.
Well, they said you can't take names off the voter rolls now.
Yeah.
All of a sudden they made this rule.
Yeah. The federal government has an opinion. Clearly it has an opinion, which it's not supposed to have. I've said this multiple times on the show. The federal government is not supposed to have an opinion on who the population decides they want to run the federal government. If we are actually a government run for the people and by the people, then the people should be deciding who gets in and out and who is taken out of office simply by the vote. And the federal government shouldn't be propagandizing the people or influencing the people. And they shouldn't be trying to say, well, if you vote for me, we'll go ahead and we'll make sure that we give you these special giveaways. And that's the entire business of the federal government nowadays.
Right.
To the point where the president says, hey, we'll forgive your student loans. The Supreme Court says, no, you're not supposed to do that. And they're still saying, well, we're going to figure out a way to do it. There is no limitation to the executive by the rest of the government anymore.
Let's do a hard segue to this story from NBC News. And I kind of want to talk more about Marjorie Taylor Greene saying that they control the weather. And of course, the media put they in quotes. But first, this is really important. Milton has intensified into a Category 5 hurricane. Massive surge warning. So before we get into the more political nature of what the story is, I just want to say, please heed the warnings from local law enforcement. Look, you got Ron DeSantis out there. He's been doing a great job with Helene. Now Milton coming through. He's done really well. I mean, relative to these other states. Take it seriously. I know we got a handful of our friends who are saying they're going to stay there, but they're not on the west side of Florida. It's going to be serious. But this story has many people questioning. Listen, this has never happened before. Right before an election, two swing states and a major Republican stronghold get slammed, but not by one hurricane, but two hurricanes. And what they're saying of this Hurricane Milton is unprecedented. So when they announced Milton, they said it may strengthen to a hurricane and then hit Florida. Then I see the next update. It's looking like it'll be a major hurricane. They were saying maybe it will be a Category 3. Then this morning they said it's a Category 3. It may actually get to the point where it becomes a 4 or a 5. We will see. 2 hours later, they're like, it's a 4.
Yeah.
2 hours later, it's a 5. Now they're saying it's even crazier. So here's what ends up happening. Several days ago, Marjorie Taylor Greene tweets out, and I'll show you. She says, this is a map of hurricane-affected areas with an overlay of electoral map by political party. Shows how hurricane devastation could affect the election. And do they have her other tweet in here? She tweeted something saying, yes, they can control the weather. That's obvious. Now, it's true. Governments, corporations, special interests have the ability to manipulate weather to a certain degree. That is, we've got cloud seeding we saw this story recently in, I think it was where, the Emirates or Dubai. There was major flooding. It was Dubai.
It's Dubai.
Major flooding because their cloud seeding operation was too good. So they were spraying some potassium derivative or some compound in the air, which basically causes the moisture to start condensing around the particles, and then it makes rain, and then that rain falls because there's moisture in the air basically all the time. So this is basically what Marjorie Taylor Greene is trying to imply. With this, it looks like she's trying to imply that Republican strongholds are being destroyed by a hurricane that was the government or deep state's doing, I guess. I mean, look, Marjorie Taylor Greene saying that, you know, the government or special interests can control the weather and then showing Republican areas being slammed by this is making the insinuation that the weather is being controlled. But I do want to pull this tweet up here from Noah Berggren. He is a meteorologist on Fox 35 Orlando, and he says, 8 p.m. Eastern Daylight Time. This is nothing short of astronomical. I'm at a loss for words to meteorologically describe, I think, to you, the storm's small eye and intensity. 897 MB pressure with 180 miles per hour max, sustained winds and gusts 200 miles per hour. This is now the fourth strongest hurricane ever recorded by pressure on this side of the world. The eye is tiny at nearly 3.8 miles wide. This hurricane is nearing the mathematical limit of what Earth's atmosphere over this ocean's water can produce. So, look, I don't know if you want to believe that this is government action, but I don't believe the government can make the most powerful hurricane ever. Or whoever, I don't know. Do you guys think that HARP is firing radio waves or something?
Allow me to put on my tinfoil hat. And back in the 60s, they were doing this, and I explained this earlier we were talking about, but Ben Livingston was a guy who was running. He was a weather guy, and then they put him into Vietnam and said, hey, make weather happen. We want to bomb the Ho Chi Minh Trail with rain. We want to take it out. So they were in the 60s, they were doing this. He's called the father of weather weapons. And that was just using cloud seeding. Now, we know that if you've seen some of these radar things where they show the Doppler radar areas that are out there, and they'll show a map of just a bunch of circles, boom, 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 and they're pulsing almost. And you can see this over and over again in these videos with these storms. And what that is, and this is my opinion, that these Doppler radar stations have a dual purpose. One is to see where the weather is, but the other thing is to put out ionizing radiation. And then you have HARP, which is up, and there's HARPs in other countries too. These antenna arrays that are heating the ionosphere, and the theory is by doing that they can maneuver large areas with weather. And then you have the space lasers that Marjorie Taylor Greene is talking about. Well, she posted a video. One of her tweets was a video, I think it's Michio Kaku, talking about how we shoot lasers at weather systems to move them around.
So I can speak a little bit to that because this has been a cloud seeding technique. Germany was famous for, going back for a little while, using infrared lasers for cloud seeding purposes to excite molecules and then cause them to act in certain ways or whatever, to move them, to condense them, to make rain. I don't know about making a hurricane, though. I mean, that's well, unless you're saying it's been like 60 years of development and these weather weapons have been massively strengthened. Or
there's patents to steer hurricanes.
How do I look that up?
Look that up. People have been posting on it.
I think you're just a crazy conspiracy theorist, and
that's
obviously this is climate change.
No,
and
totally.
The environment.
If we give Al Gore money, they'll all go away.
Isn't it amazing how no matter what, it's always the thing that helps
Did you find it?
Yes. Hurricane and tornado control device, method for controlling hurricanes, and application 20080047480 proposes a giant machine and method of operation to control hurricanes. I don't believe it means these machines are viable. Well, a patent of someone having one is just...
That's true. Who's the guy? Terrence Howard has a lot of patents, but what have they done?
Right.
I'm obviously joking. I just know that.
But that patent's from the 40s, I think. It's old.
40s?
Yeah, it's old. It's not. I don't think it's new. And they've been working on this. They put out guidebooks where they were going into hurricanes and seeding them. And another video I saw, this guy was tracking these and I think they're weather monitoring planes. But he said these same planes also have the ability to do cloud seeding. And maybe they're just running cloud seeding planes through there, beefing up this hurricane and then hitting it with other things. I don't know. I don't know the technology that's
To what end, though? Because they want Florida to not have good voter turnout?
to cause chaos. Yeah, to cause chaos. Because maybe, hey, if you hit it in the center of the state where it's mostly red, you don't have anything going in Miami's safe. That's where your Democrat strongholds are. Jacksonville's safe. The Panhandle's already been slammed, which is, that's Matt Gaetz country.
Right.
So you go through Tampa, that's pretty much
So I
taken
saw
out.
a ton of people posting about how this is. It's not that this never happens, but it's a very unusual
Very convenient.
path.
Yeah, it seems very convenient right now. And this hurricane, it doesn't really go. They don't go from Mexico over into Florida. They usually go that way. They usually go
so. It's extremely wild and rare, as I hear, for a hurricane to form in the Gulf, and then move
northeast.
Right.
Yeah, and that's and it's supposed to hit part of Mexico.
It is right now.
Bounce off. So
currently, the radar shows it over Merida, Yucatan Peninsula, I believe.
Yeah.
So it is getting slammed.
It's also worse. It's also worse if there's a high tide because it's supposed to hit Wednesday. You got to see when the high tide is because that makes the storm surge even worse.
Is it really bad for me to say I hope it veers south?
What, to Cuba?
Well, I mean, because if it turns south right now, it'll slam into the Yucatan and just wipe out a bunch of poor people living in these areas. It's not all poor people. And if it heads southeast, it'll slam into Cuba. And so it's I hope it stays where it is and fizzles out, I guess, which is not likely going to be the case considering the water is warm and it's fueling the hurricane.
Right. And if they can make these things stronger, then you would also think they can make them weaker. If the government has this power, which we don't know if they do, we seem to think they do. I seem to think they do.
No, I don't think that that's the case.
You think it's just stronger?
Just because you can start something doesn't mean you can stop it. They can smash atoms, but once that chain reaction started, they're not stopping it.
That's true.
So I don't think that the logic.
Bill says they only invested in one direction.
It goes one way.
I mean, the thing that for argument's sake, I think cloud seeding does work, right? It worked over Dubai,
it absolutely has worked. It's been around for 100 years.
So they do have cloud seeding, and so that actually is a technology that exists, but I don't think that I've heard of anything that can undo the cloud seeding I've never heard of anything that can stop rain that's started.
Didn't Trump ask about nuking a hurricane during his administration or whatever?
Yeah.
It would do nothing.
He said
it would just add radiation to the storm.
Just go around. He did say something during his inaugural address, though. He talked about releasing the technology to the masses, and he's apparently seen behind the curtain, and there's a lot of talk about his granddad, I guess, or his uncle went into the Tesla factory. Yeah. So there's this thought that maybe he knows about this technology that's sitting in warehouses like the Ark of the Covenant, in the end of Indiana Jones, and he's going to open them up. He's going to open these things up, and then now we have free energy generators for every house.
I can't believe that those books from the 1800s. What are they about Baron Trump? Who wrote Ingersoll Lockwood? That's a hoax. There's no way that's real. You know about these books?
I've heard of it. Yeah.
These books apparently.
Because I thought when I saw that, I'm like, that's got to be a hoax.
It's got to be a hoax. Apparently, these books were written in the 1800s, and one of them talks about Baron Trump becoming president, and then leftist anarchist hordes storm his castle on Fifth Avenue in New York. I'm like, this is fake.
I haven't heard Baron talk. Have you heard him talk?
Didn't he say something recently? I don't know.
No, he's just going to NYU. No one's been able to get him talking. I did see a video of a guy pretending to be Baron Trump at a bar to impress girls, which I think is kind of funny.
I heard from
there's a Wikipedia on Baron Trump novels.
Yeah, I know. And what is it? Ingersoll Lockwood?
Yep.
Yeah, the novels appear to be real. And
Travels and Adventures of Little Baron Trump and His Wonderful Dog Bulger in 1889. The sequel, Baron Trump's Marvelous Underground Journey in 1893.
I don't believe it. I still don't believe it. Because what do they even talk about in Ingersoll Lockwood? Do they mention the Baron Trump novels?
Yeah, when you find Ingersoll Lockwood, if you Google his name, Wikipedia has his.
They remained obscure until 2017 when AI wrote them.
It says they remained obscure until 2017 when they received media attention for perceived similarities between their protagonist and U.S. President Donald Trump. Yeah, because in the third book, here, let me read it. It says, in July 2017, the books were rediscovered on internet forum users and then by media who pointed out similarities between Trump. Jaime Fuller wrote in Politico that Baron Trump's precocious, restless, and prone to get in trouble. He often mentions his massive brain and as a personalized insult for most people he meets. Fuller also notes that Baron Trump lives in a building named after himself, Castle Trump, while the real-life Trump has lived in Trump Tower for decades. Furthermore, Trump's youngest son, his name is Barron Trump. And Donald Trump used the pseudonym John Barron in the 80s. Chris Rada noted in Newsweek that Barron Trump's adventures begin in Russia. Rada also mentioned another book of Lockwood's 1900 or The Last President, in which New York City is riven by protests following the shocking victory of a populist candidate in the 1896 presidential election, who brings on the downfall of the American Republic. The emergence of the novels has led to some groups claiming that it suggested that Donald and/or Barron had engaged in time travel. This was often accompanied by claims that John G. Trump, a scientist and uncle of Donald, had created a time machine alongside Nikola Tesla. I wish! Please be true.
And it's fan fiction at its finest.
I mean, dude, life is so boring. I mean, it's like not really boring. You go outside, it's beautiful. There's birds, they're pooping, there's crickets jumping around. We're having fun. Chickens be yelling. But everybody wants adventure and they want more and they want to believe this stuff. So I'm going to live in the reality where John G. Trump seizes Nikola Tesla's secret equipment, makes a time machine, goes back in time, has a kid. It's Trump's uncle or whatever who tells him this is what you're going to do. And then Trump's doing it.
All right, hands on the manuscript to Inglewood. Here you go. Write this.
No, Ingersoll Lockwood is Barron.
Oh, that's even better.
No, I don't know.
Well, now we need one of those like side-by-side face comparisons of this guy and Barron Trump. Like,
Barron went back in time too far. He went back to, 1863, and he was like, no, we've gone too far, uncle. Now we'll never go do what we were going to do in the past. What were they doing in the past anyway? I have no idea.
they'll tell us later. It's not for us to know right now.
I'm sorry. Like, the idea that Trump or Barron or someone went back in time is just, why? What are you going to the 1800s for?
I don't believe the
America was
fantastic
great then.
stuff.
That's right. That's right.
I don't believe the fantastic stuff, but like he was appointed in 1862, he was appointed to counsel the Kingdom of Hanover by Abraham Lincoln. I assume there would be some kind of document. Ingersoll Lockwood. He was appointed to counsel the Kingdom of Hanover by Abraham Lincoln. So I assume that there would be some kind of documentation if it was an official act of the government. Yep. So, at the very least, it seems like, and honestly, if it seems like this is true, and honestly, it's not like Wikipedia doesn't have a leftist bent. So anything that if this wasn't a real guy, and there was even a whiff of fabrication to
fact check.
Yeah, I imagine they would just be like, oh, get it out of here, because there are people that work on Wikipedia that absolutely hate the right. They're very, very far left, and they have done some creative editing to some of the posts and stuff, the entries to benefit or to make the left look more appealing. I guess,
there's a bias to their editors. Yeah, for sure. I am not. It's hard to totally accept they would just make the hurricane bad because of chaos for me right now. I think in part because they suffer too. Like North Carolina getting hit by a bad hurricane, and obviously this one is like a little weirder in its path and stuff. It's got a Democratic governor, and so unless you're trying to if you were to tell me they're doing it to disrupt this election, I'd be like, okay, that's a direct motivation. But chaos for chaos's sake seems like it would lead to risking a certain amount of power that I feel like you would need, especially for someone who already is in the know about the hurricane seeding technology.
You sound like you're drinking fluoridated water.
Maybe so. No, I am totally kidding about the climate change things, though. What bothers me about all of this is that was the main thing people were interested in. I mean, the media immediately jumped to see how important it is that we talk about climate change as soon as Helene hit.
Well, they do that with any storm. That's
any storm ever. And really, it's like, sure, you can say that that's great, but then shouldn't you also be mad that we're shipping money overseas?
So there's good news, and it's that Milton is actually going to slam into Tizimin, Merida, around Cancun, in Mexico, or is that Belize? I don't know what these countries are, in the Yucatan Peninsula, and so it will weaken just a little bit. I'm kidding on that being good news, but it's kind of a difficult thing to say, right? We don't want the hurricane to hit us full force. So it benefits Americans that people in the Yucatan Peninsula are being slammed by a Category 5 because the landmass will actually weaken the hurricane a little bit. And by the time it passes through, it will drop down to a 4 as it approaches Florida and then ultimately slam into Tampa as a Category 3.
That's a wild path, though.
Isn't this crazy? Yeah. It's like, it's hooking every projection model is like, oh yeah, Florida, you're screwed.
Yeah.
Like you are getting
There's nothing going like it's just going to run into Cuba. Nothing.
Nope. It's coming right for us. That's wild.
And they're already getting rain, so it's softening up the ground. I think I think that's a big reason why all the states, Georgia and North Carolina and Tennessee, they were getting rained on before the hurricane hit.
Yeah, from a different weather system.
Yeah, so you got saturated ground. That's why you had all these mudslides. It had the 24 inches or so just come by itself. Might not have been as bad, but you already had, it was primed,
Right.
you could say.
And they're already. I mean, I've watched videos of people, who live in Florida and their house is flooded during Helene. They're like, we're beginning the remediation process, and now they're just going to get hit again. I mean, it means that every emergency resource, any kind of recovery effort, either is going to get literally washed away, or it's going to have to go on pause, which means that all kinds of displaced Americans have to just kind of hang out and wait and see how many more hurricanes are going to hit before they can finally return to their lives.
I think the damage to Florida is going to be massive. And it's what we're seeing in North Carolina and Georgia is horrifying. Roads just no longer existing. And we got this tweet from Marco Rubio. He says, several years ago, I asked NHC Atlantic to show me what the worst case storm hitting Florida would look like. What they showed me back then is almost identical to the Milton forecast now. 8 to 12 foot storm surges in Tampa, 5 to 10 at Charlotte Harbor, 4 to 7 at Chokoloskee, and the Keys are going to get 1 to 3 feet. That's wild, man. Tampa is going to get flattened by this. This is just it's crazy to see. So I hope everybody's taking this seriously. Whatever it is, people were begging us to move to Florida, and I was just like, guys, I don't want to move to Florida, right? Because you got rain and it's hot. But I do want to say this. We have a lot of friends in Florida. So for those of you who are members over at timcast.com, I thank you for your membership. And if you are not, you should be. So everybody should go over to Timcast, click join us, become a member, because membership is what makes the show operate. And without members, we can't do what we do. That being said, you may have noticed in the past week, our members show were laggy, cutting in and out. This is because Hurricane Helene caused serious damage to Rumble. They are in the area. And this means they need our support more than ever. So we're going to keep doing our best to maintain our members-only show, which will be coming up at 10 p.m. Please join us there. They're a lot of fun. They're uncensored, not so family-friendly, but always funny. And this means that we're having issues with the player. Rumble is working as hard as they can to get everything working. Our website, we use Rumble infrastructure. We use Parallel Economy, which is Rumble and Dan Bongino's payment processor, because we believe in creating businesses and sustaining them to fracture the control of the hegemonic censorship industrial complex. Chris Pavlovsky of Rumble had a really great post where he said, this election is going to be a lot harder for them to censor because you've got X, you've got Rumble. And that is true. And you've got Parallel Economy for payment processing. So please bear with us and with everybody else when this storm is going to cause us delays and disruptions to our show, even up here in West Virginia. And so, that being said, everybody is getting hit by this, and we gotta deal with it. So I hope you all are willing to do so.
One of the positives is the last hurricane did deposit a lot of sand in that area, and they're actually using that sand now to make sandbags, which, you don't have to dig it out of the ocean. It's right there. It's piled up.
And it's almost helping clear sand that got deposited, too.
Right, yeah. So
like the water washed sand?
Oh, there's sand mounds everywhere. It's like the dunes now. Like you look at some of these there's parking lots and where hotels used to be, and there's just giant. It's beautiful white sand, that white crystal sand that's all over.
It all gets carried by the water, but then the water leaves.
And then it leaves and the sand's still there.
I saw the mud, which is crazy because I don't think people realize, the water washes in and it's full of mud. When the water starts going down, the dirt stays, the water evaporates or drains, and then you get 2 feet of mud, which is absolutely insane.
You got to clean it up.
Yep.
It's going to be a field day for roofers in Florida.
Yeah.
After that, roofers and tree cutters.
That's drywall people.
Well, I suppose the question for you guys is: do you think this is going to, with the talk of weather control, the concern is that North Carolina and Georgia, these are Republican strongholds, and Trump needs to win these to win these swing states. And now, a month out from the election, how are they going to run this? But Florida is deep red, and Miami's not really getting hit. Miami went red last time around. So I kind of feel like even with this damage, Florida's still going to vote Republican.
That just might be less votes overall. Because I think some of the, you think of all
affect
the
the popular
electronic voting machines that have been flooded. Those things aren't being kept on the top floor.
And it obscures polling, right? One of the issues in the last couple of weeks is every pollster ever is trying to get their queries in, especially in swing states like North Carolina. But if you can't, in North Carolina specifically, if there's no cell service, you're not answering emails or calls from pollsters.
You're not getting anything from half the state.
Right. So there's no accurate way to measure counties. I mean, presumably a lot of these counties, from what we know, were already red. But at the same time, this means that all of the data going into the election in these areas is going to be completely unreliable.
Tim, can I make one plea to your listeners out there?
Yeah.
Because I know you're a big champion of free speech. And, we're sitting here talking about these great things. Free speech is alive and well in most of the country, except down in Texas, where we have Alex Jones being attacked relentlessly by different entities that want to shut him up. And people can help out. I just want to put this out one more time to realalexjones.com. That's where we have a Give, Send, Go to help fund what's going on, because they want to take away his name. They want to take away they've filed to take away his Real Alex Jones X channel.
They can't do that.
But they want to. But
Elon owns it.
But if he doesn't fight these things, then the judge could say, well, you could take it. And then Elon could say, well, no one gets to use it. But then...
No, Elon could say, Alex gets to use it. Bye.
He could. And we'll get to that battle.
Yeah.
They also want to say he can't use the name The Alex Jones Show. Well, that's his name. And they're saying, well, no, we don't like that. They want to put a receiver over him. They've got these constant little... Now that they've are taking away things when they're going to auction everything off. They've taken that away. So now they want to go after anything residual where he can't rebuild. So really the two things left are he's literally selling T-shirts to fund the next chapter at thealexjonesstore.com and then asking people to help fund his legal defense. And people just give $5-10. 100,000 people do it. It really changes everything, especially for him, and allows him to fight these battles. We got appeals. We got all kind of stuff going on. And that's where the real fight is, I think, for the First Amendment, is showing these people that they can't dename somebody and just take away everything for something they said. Boeing killed, 100 people, 300 people. With some plane crashes, they paid $300 million in fines.
No one tried to take away their brand. I mean, they're really trying to unperson Alex Jones, which is fascinating, as if they could erase him from time, space, in the history books. How did you get involved with Infowars and Alex Jones?
I answered a Craigslist ad.
That's funny.
Literally.
You're, I think, the third Infowars guy I've heard say that.
Well, that's where we used to always put ads out on Craigslist. But I answered an ad, and they called me up. And when I got there, the guy called me on the phone, who's not there anymore, but he said, this is working for Alex Jones. I said, oh, cool. And I kind of thought it was. He didn't say it in the post.
That's the first screener.
That was the first screener. And so I show up, and Alex is interviewing a guy showing you not to get busted. He's a former sheriff's deputy. It's called Never Get Busted. And I go in there, and I'm showing all the DVDs and stuff that I made and produced. And I produced a whole DVD series for the city of South Padre Island. And he's looking at him all. He's like, this is the kind of thinking we need here. And he walks out. This is during a break, and he's eating brisket while he's doing it. And he walks out, and the guy goes, I guess you got the job. And that's pretty much how it happened. And I got there. I didn't know what I was supposed to do. I knew I was going to be a producer. So I started answering the phone. And after about like 3 days of that, Alex goes, don't answer the phone. Because we were getting all kind of crazy calls. People call in.
Yeah.
And you're just like, hello? And it's like some... long rabbit trail, and you're like, oh my God. But then it got to going and taping, and Tim, you're going to come into this story here in a second. We go in and taping long form interviews. We go interview John Perkins. We go interview Tim Ball, who was a climatologist. We'd do these long 3-hour interviews. Rosalind Peterson on chemtrails out in California. And then we'd make these documentaries, and we'd use like 10 minutes of their stuff. And then in 2011, when Ferguson happened, the paradigm had changed from shooting long form videos and putting them out on YouTube to going live. And I think that's when we discovered, he was already a name, but we discovered this guy running around with a beanie on, and we're like, who's this guy? We got to interview him. Go interview him, see what he's talking about. Because I think you might have been working for Vice at the time.
Not if I was live streaming on the ground. Probably either before or after.
Okay. And well, one of our guys got stuck into, they were getting tear gassed at Ferguson, but you're at Ferguson, right? You were there.
Oh, okay. Yeah, Ferguson was Vice. And Vice and Fusion.
But it was, that was when live streaming became big. We had the tools to go for at least an hour at a time. It wasn't really good on phones, but it was not bad. But you could buy these units and hook up a camera and get some pretty good stuff and get lots of views. We just saw the view counts go crazy on all these different platforms.
Nobody does it anymore.
They don't. And
it's weird,
right?
Know,
well, it's because, put it on Twitter and you get it, different. It's just the way things change. But that's the way the news business changed.
If you were on the ground at any one of these protests with a phone live streaming, you'd be getting millions upon millions of views. You'd gain 100,000 subscribers overnight. I don't think any of that has changed. The reason I stopped doing it is because people started just jumping in front of the camera to scream because they knew it had a million viewers or whatever.
F in the P.
Yeah. Right. Or just one guy was screaming, it's Tim. And he would just stand in front of me and be like, look at me. And I'm like, oh, I can't do this.
Can't get anything done. Yeah.
Yeah. But no one else streams anymore.
It's weird. It's weird because that's how a lot of people, made themselves. We definitely went into another arena of popularity by doing that.
It's interesting too. I think mobile live streaming's over. I tried to do a live stream when the second Trump assassination plot broke, and YouTube only allowed me to go vertical. And I'm like, ain't no way I'm walking on a vertical live streaming.
Yeah, exactly.
And so I tried to hold it sideways so you can see there's no chat. And I was like, there's no chat, and it's just this grainy, low res vertical stream. I'm like, we've gone backwards here, man.
Well, and that could be to control the paradigm or the narrative. When Facebook first started offering live streams, that was early on. Facebook Mentions, I think is what it was called. We would put Alex on, and we'd sit there and watch. He's just walking downtown, going to Google, confronting Google. We'd see 1 million viewers watching. And I think at the time we were seeing real numbers because there was no governor. There was nothing. It was just like, we're going to give you, because it was right early on when they were starting it. They wanted to give it to Alex Jones. We had a back channel to Facebook. They're like, here you go, boom. And this is before all the censorship. And we're watching this 1.3 million viewers. And we're like, whoa, this is crazy. Like you're just thinking about the number of people who are like on their phones watching whatever's going on. And that one, it just goes, that's powerful. That's a lot. That's power. And they can't let that out there. They can't let somebody like yourself to go out there and film an event and go, here's what's really going on.
I mean, I think it's cultural. I think the culture of it died. People don't want to go on the ground and do live streams. Yeah,
it is work.
It's hard to monetize.
It's a dirty business. You get shot at, you get tear gassed, you get, there's all kinds of stuff that could happen to you.
All right, we're going to go to Super Chat. So if you haven't already, would you kindly smash that like button, subscribe to this channel, share the show with everyone you know, because it's the best show on the internet. Everyone agrees, at least that's what I've been told. And become a member at timcast.com. That members only show is coming up in about 20 minutes. And of course, leave us a good rating if you're listening on the audio podcasts or if you're just in general. Everyone go to Apple Podcasts or whatever and just 5 stars. We would really appreciate it. It does help. T-Bomb says the Timcast members only 7 Days to Die server has been upgraded bigly. Come survive with us in a post-Kamala USA. Tim, we have your beanie. Well, I'd like it back, but it's okay. Scooby Dragon says, howdy, people. Howdy. Councilman Robert Suppenblock says, Kamala reminds me of the Sky Marshal in Starship Troopers that takes over and immediately throws her former boss under the bus. Yeah, I kind of don't think Kamala wants to be president. I think they told her, I think they put her there. Biden's like, we're getting rid of him and you're going to run. And she's like, oh, geez.
Why would they get rid of Biden if they really?
Because he couldn't win. Down ticket, he was going to cost them a bunch of seats.
Oh, down.
And then they're like, we have no time to get anybody. And the war chest can only be transferred reasonably to Kamala, despite the fact legally, I don't think it can.
Yeah.
But they have no argument to put all that money in any other candidate if they swap him out.
I went to the campaign office, the Harry Balls campaign office in Ranson. Completely empty. I mean, it's filled with stuff, but it doesn't look like anybody's done anything.
Wait. In Ranson, there's a
little campaign office
for Harris.
Yeah,
really?
Right downtown. I walked in. I'm looking around. What? Hello, anybody there? I took 2 pictures of it. I took a picture of the front, then I walked in,
and no one was there.
No one was there.
The door was open.
The door was wide open. It said, "Come on in," and there's stacks of stuff on the tables.
I mean, maybe they're just in the bathroom.
They could have been. I mean, I said hello.
Yeah, all one for real. Like, I doubt they're going to spend a lot of money in West Virginia, but this is important because it opens up legal standing for West Virginia residents for anything Kamala Harris as a campaign does. So when they go after Trump or other nonprofits from various states for operating in their state or whatever, if there's questions about any actions they're doing in terms of financing or otherwise, if their campaign is operating in West Virginia, And of course they're going to operate in every state.
And they could just say that. Yeah, here we are. Boom.
Well, now it's like, look, they're operating here. This is what they're fundraising off of. This is what they're saying. You know, what citizens of West Virginia, residents of West Virginia have legal standing. All right, let's grab some more. Shane H. Wilder says, prayers to everyone in the path of Hurricane Milton. To anyone watching, if you can help, please help, even if it's just prayers. Indeed.
There's the inside of it.
Oh, that looks nice. I mean, was there coffee?
You know, I didn't see any coffee.
I want to go check it out. Yeah. Vincent Latore says, I was at the rally in Butler and I saw that you were there too by your post on X. I jokingly responded that my wife and I wanted to hang out, and then my account immediately got locked for violent speech. Well, that's weird. Yeah, we went. We hung out with Jack Posobiec. It was great. He was doing the War Room podcast live for all of the people. And the line, this is crazy because we got there at 9 a.m. and the line went on forever.
Oh, yeah.
3 hours later, the line was still there. And I think it went on for several more hours because you can see the aerial photos. And it was really great. Got to meet a lot of really cool people. Took a lot of pictures with everybody. Did a really great couple of interviews. Did an interview with Midas Touch. I would be very surprised if they upload it raw in its full. But I would not be surprised if they edit it and selectively put up things that I said, because that's usually what people do.
Yeah.
That's what they do.
The crowd in Pennsylvania was really interesting. I mean, there was a constant stream all day long. I think I got there maybe around 1 and stood in line for maybe 40 minutes to get in, and then it just never stopped. I mean, if you were like, because I like to walk around, like you would walk kind of up to where the screens are as close as you get and walk away, and it got harder and harder. You had to stop moving because it just became this huge mass of people. And it reminded me of I watched this miniseries a long time ago on Jared Garcia and like the Deadhead movement. Oh, yeah. And you know, I would talk to people in the crowd and they'd be like, "Oh yeah, this is like my 5th or 6th Trump rally." Like they really do have that like
they follow it around, yeah.
They follow it around. It was fascinating.
It's a cultural movement.
And almost, I mean, I can't tell you how many people were like, "Well, I was here on July 13th, so I came back," and I asked them like, "Were you nervous? Like, did you feel anxious?" And they're like, "No, why?"
Was anybody on the roof?
There were so many people on the roof. All of the budget went to the snipers.
Of course,
and it was amazing. The one thing that someone in the crowd pointed out to me was like, I don't see it being on the water tower.
Right.
But I almost feel like they're like, we don't want to steer up anything this time.
Yeah, 6 people on the water tower.
Yeah, lots of people on the roof, which was fascinating.
So I finished high school in Pennsylvania, and in between the RNC and the DNC, the RNC was in Cleveland, and then we went to the DNC in Philly. But we stopped in Pittsburgh on the night before, and I went and saw some old friends. And these are all Democrats, working class Democrats. Every one of them was voting for Trump.
Yeah.
And right then I'm like, oh, he's going to totally win, because the working class people have finally woken up. They're like, oh, the Democrats aren't our friend anymore.
Right.
And they realize that. They're like, we're not voting for Hillary. They're like, we're Trump all the way. And Westmoreland County, which is normally a blue county, it went red for that election. And that was, I think, because these people had just had enough and they've seen it. And I think you're going to see the same thing again.
Yeah, I agree. I mean, that's the thing of the story of West Virginia for the most part. West Virginia at one point was a Democratic stronghold, and people don't realize that now. But it is one of 2 states that went entirely for Trump in 2020, and Jefferson County.
Oklahoma was the other one.
Yeah. And Jefferson County, where Branson is, which you were mentioning, is one of 2 that came like within 50%. So it was like, I think 54% of the county voted for Trump.
That's why they have their headquarters.
Right. They're like, this is the one place we might be able to win. But I think, you know, one of the county commissioners who spoke at the rally said, I am declaring Butler the capital of Trump country. And I do think that sort of Rust Belt of America feels that. I mean, even though they might have been super blue, we are working people, union members at one point, they know that no matter what Joe Biden says, no matter what Kamala Harris pretends, that party does not represent them anymore.
They've seen the results. And it's taken a while. It's taken a few generations, but they're like, you know what? It's not getting any better. We keep putting these people in office. Nothing gets better. But I think it's our responsibility as communities to make our communities better.
Yeah, I agree.
You know, we got to have more civil defense. So when these things happen, there's a group of people who are ready on standby. And it's not that we're not waiting for the government to show up. People are bootstrapping it up and going, you know what, we got to start taking care of ourselves. But I think a lot of that comes with you're not looking for, you know, making it through your next paycheck, you know, just to pay what bills you're going to pay. You know, you have to be comfortable to make that society, which we used to have. That type of society. And hopefully we can get back to that and be inclusive for everyone.
All right. Zach Matisse says, for the first time, New York might be a toss-up. I've never seen a political ad here in upstate New York. The last 2 days, we've seen 2 Trump and 1 Kamala. I don't know if it's a toss-up.
I think that
Interesting, though.
I think the fact that Harris is advertising is actually more telling than Trump.
Oh, yeah.
Because that means that they've done internal work that says, well, maybe we do need to shore up our support in New York.
We can't just go with Long Island or not Long Island, but Manhattan.
Right.
Yeah, we have to like actually do some work.
I think that speaks volumes about. Go ahead.
No, I totally agree with you. Trump said last year at the New York Young Republicans Gala, we're going to win New York. And it's one of those things where it's like, of course you want to win New York, you lifelong New Yorker. Like, okay, fine. But I think Democrats, like you're saying, would only spend money there this close to the election if they felt like there was something to be anxious about. And maybe it's the down ticket races. Like maybe they want to have this presence there for that reason. But it wouldn't behoove them if they really thought it was a locked-in election.
Yep.
Tommy Grashong says, Operation Popeye. The U.S. military used weather modification against North Vietnam, specifically to make it rain harder in certain areas to wash out roads and bog down enemy movement. Wow. Here in Gaming News says, you'd think Kamala would at least pretend to care. We should do a donation drive for the victims of the hurricane. Can you please donate my $10 for relief efforts? Perhaps donate unneeded clothes too. We'll take a look. We'll see what we can do.
I had a friend drive down baby clothes. He had all his baby clothes. He drove them down there. He saw bodies in the water. He was in a boat waiting with waiters, and it's crazy down there. What's going on?
We here at Timcast would like to provide assistance so long as it doesn't interfere with any ongoing emergency efforts.
Right.
So perhaps at some point in the future, we will consider whether or not we may go down to our computers to look at our schedules to think about if we'll help people.
You know, there's always stories
I didn't know
about
you were in the White House. It's crazy.
trucks of
I gotta
water.
write speeches for Kamala.
There's trucks of water showing up, and they're like, "No, we don't want your water." That happened in Katrina. There were trucks of water showing up, and they're like, "No, you're not from our approved vendor."
Yep.
People are like, "What? Like, what is this?"
Like our contracts are very important to us.
Jacob Hawley says, remember the 5th of November, the gunpowder treason and plot. I see no reason why the gunpowder treason should ever be forgot. This election will be crazy. Get prepared. And stocked boys, Phil, now that you're back, run for government again?
I'm not running for any position in government.
Did you run before?
I have never done anything like that, and I'm offended at the implication.
What would you run for?
What?
What would you run for?
The Hills.
I
is that a political party?
Only
I
in New
tease
Hampshire.
Allison all the time by mentioning a future presidential run, and then her face just like gets wiped clean whenever I say it. And then we were driving back from the rally, and I was saying something like, we're setting up a studio in D.C. so that we can. There's a lot of members of Congress who ask to come on the show all the time,
Right?
But they're like, I know it's only an hour and a half drive, but it's an hour and a half round trip, and we can't. So we found a really great location for a studio that's very close to the Capitol. And then I was like, yeah, we'll do that for a couple of years. And then when I run, she goes, I knew it. I was like, I'm kidding. I will never run for office.
They got to look under the beanie if that happens.
If I run for office?
If you run for office. Yeah.
I don't want to go anywhere near government. Government is horrible.
I would say terrible things on Maine just to prevent my.
But to sound more aggressive and strong, I'll just use the Lex Luthor line instead. Do you have any idea how much power I would have to give up to become president? That's the real reason I don't want to do it. No, I'm kidding. I wouldn't want to do anything in government. Lord help me. But that's
that seems
actually
terrible. But then that's why a lot of people don't go into government, because they're successful and they're like, why should I give up this life to go be?
That's what Trump said during his speech at the rally. He was like, I could be in Monte Carlo, but instead I am here. I would rather be in Butler.
I'm here with you people. You people.
He's like, I have so many beautiful properties.
Yeah.
All right, Val says, Brimcast, great. Welcome, Tim. Will election reveal which undercurrent is stronger? Western Republican nationalism versus socialist global communism? Is the fight actually independent voters versus voting shenanigans subverting the vote of said independents? Twill be interesting. Twill.
I think it's voting shenanigans.
Yeah.
Thank you guys.
I'm voting for voting shenanigans.
Yeah, I was just saying thank you guys for tuning in on Friday for Brimcast. I was happy to do it, but I know you guys loved him, and I'm glad he's back.
Oh, yeah. It was a heck of a drive in Cybertruck. It was fun, though. Guys, Breezewood, PA is the greatest city in the country. Have you ever been there?
No.
There's only one reason why it is.
There's a casino.
No, there's an original full standing Pizza Hut.
Ooh.
Oh.
With salad bar and everything.
That's
And so
The square or the rectangle?
Is it like the last one in the country, or is it just one
no,
of the
there's
few?
a bunch, but it's great because Breezewood's like a trucker junction. So there's a bunch of gas stations and truck stops, and we parked. We hooked up the Cybertruck and said, "Let's just get some juice here." And what should we do? And I was like, "That's a Pizza Hut." And we went in, and Allison got a pineapple thin crust because she likes pineapple, and I got wings, and they were delicious. And it
Pizza Hut was the
everything-
first outlet to do the barbecue pizza.
Really?
Yeah, they were the first ones. I remember in the
They had
maybe
the-
late
they had the red
80s,
cups.
they had the little barbecue pizza you could get when, it was amazing.
Yeah.
Back in the day.
And they had the salad bar and the pizza buffet, but it was closed because it was like super late at night. I think it was like 10 o'clock or whatever when we got there, and they were open till 11.
That's cool.
And I was like, I haven't sat down at a Pizza Hut restaurant in so long, and their ingredients are garbage.
Yeah.
But it brought back memories.
Yeah, I mean, it's horrible for you, but as a once in a great while thing, it's fine.
But I just had the wings and scraped some of the cheese off because I'm not
Chickowitz.
doing any. I mean, it's not bad. You know, fresh chicken from Chicken City brand chicken is much better. But I like chicken. I was thinking about this recently because when you order wings, you get 12, right? Which is basically 2 arms and 2 legs each. So that's six birds dead.
6 breasts that are somewhere.
Yeah, someone's eating those. But I'm just like, I wonder how many chickens I've killed this week. And so I got to be honest, last week, the only thing I ate was wings. Monday, Tuesday, Wednesday, Thursday, Friday was just wings. Was Friday? Yeah, just wings. And so it's about 12 wings per order. So that's that's 30 chickens that died to feed me. Granted, the chicken breasts, I don't know who ate those. So I didn't eat the whole chicken. But that's a lot of chicken wings. Killing a lot of birds.
The grocery store near me when I was growing up used to sell like the rotisserie chicken, but they would sell like bags of wings and thighs. And I had a friend come over as a kid, like count all of them, and then turn to my stepmom and be like, "This is a weird chicken. It had 4 different wings," because she had never like seen it like that before.
We've got a cricket crisis here at the Freedomson warehouse. So I take the leaf blower and I blow all the dust out of the park. It's a big building. And then the other day, there's under one of the ramps sticks out a little bit. It's called the love seat. And it's, I don't know, 12 feet wide. I put the blower under the sheet metal and 20 crickets came flying out. Yeah. They're everywhere, screaming up a storm, running around, living underneath the ramps. And so I've got a solution. We're going to get a couple chickens and let them go. Just to run around the place, just chasing down the crickets.
Put a skateboard helmet on.
Smorgasbord. And the chickens will probably poop, but it's okay. We can clean the poop up if they get rid of all the crickets.
They'll clean up the crickets pretty quickly.
And here's the best part. They'll lay eggs from the crickets that we will eat. So we're basically turning the crickets into food. We will not eat the crickets. We will not eat the bugs. We will eat the eggs that the chickens give us.
Perfect.
That's why I believe in the 20th
Nature's
Amendment.
perfect food.
The right to keep, bear, and breed chickens shall not be infringed. And Arizona recently passed this law at the state level. No one can ban you from backyard chickens because Arizona, that was based. All right, we'll grab some more super chats here. What have we? Andrew Yu says, just saw a billboard in the Cincinnati area saying to report hate crimes to the FBI with an associated phone number. Thought crimes have become a reality nationwide.
Yeah.
Heavens.
Oh,
You know something about thought crimes, am I right?
I do. I'd also, I'm gonna give you guys a little secret when we go to the, what do you call it, the executive session?
Members only.
Members only.
Executive session.
That's what they call it in Congress when they're going to talk about stuff that they don't want you to hear. They call it the executive session. But I'm going to teach people. I will tell them how I do not go through the body scanners at the airport. Foolproof way. Totally
Yeah, they pat you
legal.
down.
No, well, no, I don't even get pat down.
How do you do it? Oh, you're.
Oh, I'm going to show you then.
Oh, all right.
We'll do it then.
All right.
Stay tuned.
I have a foolproof way as well. It's called TSA Pre.
Oh, yeah.
I'll walk right in. All right. Armor says, this is for Phil. I had VIP tickets for y'all at Richmond. I know it was an issue with the venue, but what happened?
I can't say. It was a safety issue, and it was the venue, and that's all I'm allowed to say because all that remains was a support act. That's an issue with Live Nation, with the venue, and with Megadeth, and it has actually with the venue and Live Nation. It has nothing to do with All That Remains and stuff. So
I bet Diddy was there. We got to go. We're shutting it down.
everybody's just running. Yeah, but I can't talk about it because there are legalities surrounding it. So nobody did anything wrong or anything. It was a safety issue. So, but it was something that had to be done. So I apologize.
Before a show, we were interviewing Megadeth backstage. It was like 2011 in Dallas, and we're sitting there he goes, y'all just come hang out. We're gonna rehearse the show. And they literally sat in a circle playing with no amps or anything. The drummer's beating on his arm. They do the whole show, front to back. And then they go out and just nail it. And it's amazing. Do you do that when you...
We don't do that. We have done that with, like, if we're debuting a new song or whatever, like, everyone will go through the stuff. And it's fairly normal, like Megadeth sets up a jam room every day. So they have like an electronic kit, and everyone's got small amps. And so, like, if they want to work on stuff, they'll go in there and work on stuff. But I mean, because they're headlining, at sound check, they just go out onto the stage and do it.
Yeah.
And just, do it full volume. And they lock the place down. They're like, no one can come in to watch. Like, even the other bands, we're not allowed to go watch. I mean, you can still hear it because you're in the venue. But
do you have a pre-show ritual, though? Like that you guys...
I do have a warm-up that I do, and I kind of do a little, get the heartbeat going and do some push-ups and stuff like that and kind of jump around a little bit,
It's funny. He doesn't do it before IRL. That's why I'm asking. He treats this very differently than his rock star job.
This is very different. I'm not expected to jump around. I don't have to yell as much.
You don't have to get your heartbeat up.
That's right.
Let's grab a couple more super chats. No Name says, I grew up in Dayton, Ohio in the late 70s. Wright-Patterson seeded snowstorms that dumped feet of snow 2 years in a row. Did they now? Alex Stein is convinced that the Earth is flat too, right? That was a whole thing we had to go through.
I thought it was sort of donut shaped. Is that not what it was?
No, the donut Earth theory is that it is hollow and flat, meaning it is a donut. But Earth is not a donut because you'd be able to see the other side from the inside of the donut. You know what I mean? But
is that what
these flat Earthers are wild, man.
Is he gonna go to Antarctica?
He talks big game about the Earth being flat, and then I'm like, I'll pay. And I did a poll to the audience, and I said, should we spend $35,000? I mean, that's crazy, right? To send Alex Stein to Antarctica, and it was like 95% yes. And I'm like, hey, look, the people who watch the show and become members at timcast.com are who pay the bills. And if they say Alex Stein goes to Antarctica, well, then God willing, we will send that man to Antarctica. But the only problem is he's scared.
Well, if he's got a Starlink too, he could stream the whole thing.
That's right. And we got Starlink. We could send him with one. And come on. What's wrong? Why is he?
Come on, Alex.
He's not going to do it. He won't do it.
I mean, look, he should. It's a long trip, and you're covering the cost.
Wasn't it his idea to go?
He can make content too. I mean, it's not like
I don't think he expected me to say yes. He's thinking like it's $35,000. No one's going to pay for that. I was like, I'll do it.
It's cool.
And he's like, well. But look. If it were up to me, I think there's better things we can do with that much money. I mean, we could, hire someone to help make clips or something, or maybe do some promos, buy some billboards. But the audience said 95% they want to see Alex Stein. And that's what it's all about,
It would
right?
get some views.
Get you a thick jacket, Alex Stein.
If he goes in December, it's actually warm.
Oh, yeah.
Yeah, so it can get as high as 60 degrees.
What?
There you go.
Yeah, mid-60s.
You need a light jacket.
Yep. That's right.
Jump around a little bit, get your sweat up.
And that's why it's you go in the wintertime here. It's summertime down there, so it's all day.
Yeah.
It's sunny all day, and not as cold. So what's the problem?
Get that snowmobile, lots of fuel, go.
The problem is it's not very interesting to haze penguins.
There's a really good example that he brought up, but he didn't want to listen to, and why the flat Earth stuff, why they make these mistakes. And one of them is that there's something called the impossible day or whatever. There's one day, July 8th or something, where 99% of the world is experiencing sunlight. And it's because the majority of people between like the Asian continent are in daylight. It's because it is day where most people are, not that the planet is more than 50% covered in daylight or whatever. But they misconstrue this and think that it means 90% of the planet is experiencing sunlight instead of 90% of the population. And so it's things like this where then people go off and make these crazy videos and misunderstand what they're talking about.
Yeah, I saw a diagram of like a circle around like India and some of Southeast Asia and China, and it's like 2/3 of the Earth's population lives inside that circle, or maybe it was a third or something.
It's not just that too, but we have daylight when the sun has set. Meaning you look at the horizon, the sun is gone, and it's still not night, right? You're at twilight, and it's sun is setting, but you'll still see some daylight. So anyway, all right, we'll grab a couple more super chats while we're here. We've got Peter Gohawk says, we need to send Ian to Florida to stop the hurricane. Awesome show. Keep up the good work. Crazy world right now. Yeah, Ian also is convinced he can control the weather, yet he never wants to whenever you need him to.
Right. I asked him this the other week. I was like, this is before Helene. If you can control the weather, why not, buddy? And he was like, the people can do it themselves.
Oh my God, what a cop-out.
What if Ian just shows up drenched in sweat like, it's my fault. I made Milton. And then he actually filmed himself meditating in Florida, calling for a hurricane. And it's like,
get out of here, you drama queen.
Is it orgone
Not
or
make this
hair?
about
What
you.
does he
Yeah.
use? How does he do it?
he closes his eyes and he sends his vibrations out into the atmosphere to
Calm the
harp
storm.
or something.
He lies. He lies. That's what he does. He lies.
Or he genuinely believes. And
crazy.
I texted Luke and Luke was like, no, for real, he made the clouds go away. And I was like, no, the clouds were going away. And then Ian made a weird noise. I'm sorry. I wish it were real. All right, let's
Use
grab
your powers for good, Ian.
Thomas Durante says, hi, Tim and all. I'm watching 60 Minutes Behind. Please read this. I'm in Bradenton, right in the path of Milton. Send us good thoughts. I grew up here, and this is the first to head right at me. Heavens. Well, I don't know, man. I think people should get out if they're saying get out.
That's what I've always heard, that this area doesn't really get hit by hurricanes the way that
It
we
usually
other
travels
way.
up, yeah.
Yeah.
And so you must be, I mean, I assumed as someone who is not from Florida that all of Florida is more prepared than most states for a hurricane, but especially if emergency resources have already been deployed to the other side that was just hit, I can't imagine what's going on there now.
We got one last super chat. This is a big one. Darksea says, Tim, have you seen the story earlier today that an unmarked helicopter did a low fly pass in Burnsville, North Carolina, destroyed supplies given to survivors? I saw those videos. There's a bunch of them. You see these?
I got some intel on it, actually.
Do you know what the helicopter is?
Well, apparently it was the National Guard of that state. It was North Carolina or Tennessee. I think it was North Carolina.
North Carolina.
And that it was, and they were trying to land. That's what I talked to
And
a
it
buddy.
was- right.
And they were, and when they stop, they can't really just like take off again. It's not like, being anti-gravity.
Increases the pressure.
So they do that, and then and so maybe it did look bad because I looked at the video. I'm like, those guys are a-holes, and then but I made some calls.
Hanlon's razor.
Some people were like, I think they were National Guard. They were trying to stop and make a water drop. They couldn't, but they can't move that fast. And it's a big Black Hawk helicopter. And
All right, everybody. If you haven't
Starlink
already,
survived though. The Starlink survived.
Please, would you kindly smash that like button and subscribe to this channel? We are going to have that members-only show coming up, so go to timcast.com right now. Click Join Us, $10 a month. We need your support. It makes the show live. Without your support, we can't do this. But also, make sure you're giving us a good review if you're listening on Apple Podcasts, because we know we have a big audience over there, and we've never really asked for 5-star reviews before. So I'm going to start doing that now. And, of course, timcast.com. You can follow me on X and Instagram at Timcast. Rob, do you want to shout anything out?
Well, I would just like to encourage people to, support Alex Jones because he's done a lot for the First Amendment. He's done a lot for this country, and he's been doing it for a long time. And I think he wants to stay in the game for at least another 10, 15 years. So, let's keep him in the game. Go to realalexjones.com. Help him out with his Give, Send, Go. Check out some of the T-shirts at thealexjonesstore.com. And I don't even know if you know this. I do a political puppet show with my kids.
Oh.
Probably never, I don't know if you've seen it or not, but
Amazing.
that's the other thing I do. And other than working away at Infowars for the last 15 years. So
Where can people find the puppet show?
you can find it on YouTube. It's called Grunyons, Grunyons.
Right on.
I am Phil That Remains on Twix. I'm Phil That Remains Official on Instagram. The band is All That Remains. You can check us out. Well, we don't really have anything coming up right now, but you can check out our videos on our YouTube page. It's All That Remains. It's youtube.com/All That Remains. We have 3 new videos out. One for a song called Divine, a song called Let You Go, and a song called
It was so great to have you here as well. I did go to the Trump rally in Butler. I thought it was really interesting. I covered it and posted, and Post Millennial has been kind enough to publish it. So I'll share the link after the show. You can follow me on Instagram at hannahclaire.b and on X at hannahclaireb. Thanks for everything you guys do. Have a good night.
We will see you all over at timcast.com in about a minute. Thanks for hanging out.